So guys, what if Naruto was god of Dark Knight and Sona as slave movie? My alarm blared to life, waking me from my restless sleep, leading me throw it into the wall. Rolling out of bed, I took a look around my apartment and saw my drawer where my uniform was laying on and my desk where my book bag was sitting. I jumped into my bathroom and took a quick shower and changed into the school uniform. It was a black jacket with a white shirt underneath it and a pair of blue pants along with black sneakers. My blonde hair was spiked up and my blue eyes were shining like the ocean. I had a tan complexion, so I looked more like an American than an Asian, even though I am 100% Asian descendant. After eating my breakfast, I looked at my picture hanging on the wall with the kids from the orphanage I grew up in. Next to me were many of the kids that grew up in the orphanage, but some of them were moved to a branch in England, so I never saw them after that. Next to me on my right was a blue-hair girl with golden eyes and a blank look on her face. Her name was Zenobia and she was my best friend growing up. She always said God had great plans for us but never knew what they were, but she always said it was just his way of testing if our faith is strong enough to understand his plan in the end. Honestly, I believed in God to a degree, but I am still waiting to feel his amazing love that the nun running the orphanage preached us about. A few weeks passed, she and some of the others left the nun that was running the orphanage. Her name was Griselda and she was in charge of us. She informed us they were chosen by the church to participate in a specific program but never told us what it was, but I respected her too much to ask her any stupid questions about it really. However, before Zenobia left, I gave her a heart necklace with me having the key to it, so the only way to open the locket is for us to meet each other again, and we promised each other we would. She told me she would wait for me no matter how long it was, and no matter what happens we would still be best friends till the end. After looking at the picture, I turned to my door and walked out of my apartment after locking the door. I lived in a pretty nice place, nothing fancy really, but it was cheap and clean, so who was I to complain? Luckily, I got a part-time job in town serving as a waiter, and I was very popular at the restaurant, so I tend to have a lot of tips to cover my apartment rent and food costs. Honestly, I would never tell anyone I know at school where I worked, but I wasn't exactly embarrassed by it, but it was something the school didn't need to add to my harsh life. In my school I am considered lower than shit, and that was saying something considering there was a group of perverts on campus that people preferred over me even though they peak on girls changing. This all started after I tried to make friends with these 3 girls from the occult research club and was treated as shit for it. All the girls pretty much said I was an orphaned loser and I should nt bother them about being their boyfriends. Honestly, I didn't even want to be that, it would have been nice, but still. As soon as that incident happened, they started spreading rumors around campus I was sexually harassing them and was a sex deviant. From that point on, I was the hatred of most of the female students and all of the male students. One time I was walking by the kendo club during practice while those 3 idiots were peeking. They were caught, but they soon shifted the blame on me and I was beaten badly by the girls with their kendo sticks. The 3 idiots still got their beating, but I was just walking by and I was beaten for it. Soon in class 1 was harassed by the students to the point where they would steal my stuff and screw up my test and homework just for their own sick amusement. I could see the Rias and her 2 friends were getting a kick out of this, and all I wanted to do now was die. Arriving on campus, I took a deep breath and started heading toward my homeroom in hopes of avoiding problems today. However, I was soon met with the whispers of my fellow students. Look, it's him. God, why can't he get the hint and get lost? Man, even those 3 are better than him. We know they're losers, but he has to harass everyone. Maybe we should get him after class so he gets the message. I turned to the main building and walked through the entrance and headed up to my class. Arriving in class 1, saw nobody else was here yet, so I sat at the front of the class in front of the teacher's desk and waited for class to start. Honestly, they didn't bother me if I was in front of teacher, knowing they wouldn't take any of this bullying I was suffering. But sometimes they would pass me when Rias and her friends were nearby like I wasn't even there. Luckily, I only have 2 more years of this bullshit and then I am out of here. Even with them messing with my work, I still was one of the top students in the academy and I was being interviewed by some of the best colleges in the country right now. Hopefully things will turn around once I get to college. Students started pouring into the classroom, and before any of them could start bothering me, a blonde hair prince-like boy sat down next to me and gave me a charming smile. This was Kiba, and he was a member of Rias Club, but for some reason he was the only one that never bothered me personally. I didn't understand this, but I later found out he was secretly sending his fangirls after me by making up rumors that I was bothering him and his club. I thought he was an okay guy, but after finding out about that, I now knew everyone in that club were assholes. He sat next to me for some reason, but I never let my guard down around him and made sure to keep an eye on him at all times. The teacher walked into the room and soon the bell followed afterwards. It was a blonde teacher with bright blue eyes and a flawless complexion. She wore a top that revealed a lot of her cleavage, much to the joy of most of the male students. She had on a short skirt barely reaching down to her knees. She was our English teacher, Irina Yelovich. She can teach in this story, J. and she was one of the only teachers in the whole school that had my back no matter what. When she first heard the rumors she was skeptical, so she asked me to honestly answer if I really was like that. When I said no, she believed me because I was not the kind of person who would lie to her. I asked how she figured that. She just winked at me and told me she was sure about this. Now class, let's get started. First everyone turn in your homework for this week. Thus began another long day of harassment from the students and being mistreated by them as well. After classes, my last class for the day, and I was done now. But I had something I had to do first, so I packed my things and started heading out of the classroom. Before I could exit the room though, I ran into 3 idiots I was hoping to avoid today. One was shaved head kid with big ears, another black hair boy with glasses, and brown hair and eye boy next to them. These in order were Matsuda, Motohama, and Issei, and they were the perverted trio on campus. Matsuda was a perverted lolicon, Motohama was an idiot that could tell you a girl's 3 sizes, and Issei was a breast-loving idiot. Out of everyone on campus, they were the most likely person to harass me because they were viewed as better than me, so by default they are seen beating me up. They are considered popular, thus leading them to their own harems. However, this was their idea, but honestly it would never happen, and I kicked their asses after every time they picked a fight with me. I already have an extensive study in martial arts and using swords of different kinds, so this was nothing compared to my teacher Griselda. First Issei approached me from my right and then his 2 friends came at me from my left. They surrounded me in the hallway with other students watching to see what happened. Really, it was a lose-lose situation for me because no matter what happened I would become the bad guy no matter what. Fight back and it becomes me bullying them, and if I get beat by them I am then mocked for being weak. Really no way to come out on top in this situation. First Matsuda lunged at me first with his left arm extended in a sloppy punch, but I dodged out of the way of it and tripped him. He went face first into the floor, then his friend Motohama tried to sneak up on me, but I quickly ducked under his punch and with a spin sent my knee into his stomach, causing him to hunch over. Finally Issei charged at me with a battle cry, but I quickly sent a spinning back kick into his chest, sending him to the ground with the wind knocked out of him. The 3 were groaning in pain and all I could do was sigh. Don't you idiots ever get tired of this? Issei looked at me with a fire in his eyes. Never. If we beat you then the girls will flock to us for taking out a major sicko on campus. I looked behind him and then back to him. So what you're saying is that you only fight me so you can get the girls naked, is that it? Yes, with that we will finally have our own personal harems. I looked over at Matsuda and then rolled my eyes at him. Is that so, you stupid brats? The 3 boys froze in their spots and slowly turned around to see a teacher they feared. This teacher had long red hair reaching down her back and brown eyes that were showing her anger right now. This was Ms. Urza Scarlet, and she was the head of the cooking class and she was known pervert hater. She is also the only other teacher that doesn't believe the rumors about me and is the only person that actually talks to me about my day on her time off. Well then, let's take this point of view of yours to the headmaster now, shall we? Whining in protests, she grabbed the 3 boys by the back of their jackets and started dragging them through the hallway with a thud in her step caused by her high heel shoes. I turned around and started down the hall, ignoring the usual banter of my fellow students of how I got them in trouble on purpose. Some of the girls were disgusted with their antics, but they hated me more. They weren't willing to give me sympathy. After walking across the building, I arrived outside the student council room. The president wanted to see me for our scheduled chess match. I met the president when I was hiding out in the music room one day to avoid my problems. There was a piano there and I started playing it, and soon it drew Sona, the school president's, attention. She asked me what I was doing in here and I explained my situation to her and also told her that I saw the piano and wanted to play it. Sona understood this and told me that as long as I was only here not during one of my classes then it was fine, and she enjoyed my music and wanted to hear more of it, so I started playing more for her enjoyment, and before I knew it I had the entire student council listening to me. So on after classes were over I paid them a visit and helped them out with anything they needed and would go a few rounds with Sona in chess. Honestly, I thought Sona was perfect in beauty, considering she didn't flaunt it for everyone to see and didn't brag about it either. That is one of the things I hated about Rias, because she flaunted her large breasts for everyone to see and then got upset when people stared at her chest too long. Sona, however, didn't need to flaunt her beauty, and even though she didn't have breasts as large as Rias, she had a certain beauty that made her more attractive to me. I knocked on the door and someone said enter. Walking into the room I saw Sona was alone with her friend Tsubaki. Sona had a black hair bob cut along with deep purple eyes that looked like amethyst. She didn't have a large chest like most girls, but she was well developed, along with her having an amazing figure. She also was wearing a pair of purple glasses on her face, which I think drew more attention to her eyes. Tsubaki, the girl next to her, was similar in many ways, but she had long hair that reached down her back and one eye that was brown and the other was violet. She was also wearing blue glasses, but they were square-shaped instead. The other key difference was that Tsubaki had a huge chest that could rival even Rios in just sheer size. Both girls were looking at me with small smiles on their faces, which was unusual for them considering they are usually very straight-faced. Sona was sitting behind her desk and she had a chessboard set up for the two of us to play on, so putting my bag next to my seat I sat down and greeted both of them. It's nice to see you both again, Madam President and Madam Vice President. Naruto, please call us by our given names please. Of course, sorry about that Sona, Tsubaki, they nodded their head. And Sona made the first move. The game was fast and intense to the point that Tsubaki was silent watching every move we made. Every time Sona made a move to block me I countered it by either moving into another place to threaten her king or to take one of her pieces. Eventually the game was boiling down to a stalemate in which neither one of us could do anything other than repeat movements. I enjoyed times like these because at this point I felt like I was really being challenged to do something that wasn't running for my life from the female students. Well, I guess it's another draw then, Sona. Yes indeed it is. I must say, Naruto, you are quite gifted at this game. Have you ever considered going pro? I shook my head. No, I don't really care about being a chess world champion because my goal in life is to evolve my personality, not my brain. She nodded her head and Tsubaki brought us both some tea. Thank you, Tsubaki. She nodded her head at me with a small blush on her face. Tsubaki made some of the best tea that I've ever tasted, and honest to God I don't think anyone could do better than her. Oh President, this reminds me that I've been hearing a rumor around campus lately. Sona looked at her with interest and motioned for her to continue. Apparently that boy Issei is supposed to be seeing some girl outside of our school. This caught my interest now because earlier I heard him talking about having a harem and now I hear he has a date with a pretty girl. Sona, from what I could tell, looked interested but at the same time angry about something. It wasn't my place to pry, so I continued to sip my tea, but heard something she was whispering to Tsubaki that caught my interest. So Rios will be making her move Sunday then? I raised an eyebrow at this. What could Rios want with Issei that had to deal with his date on Sunday? I finished my tea and grabbed my bag and bowed to both of them. Thank you both for the hospitality, but I have to get home since most of the students have left now. Sona looked at me with a frown. Are you ever going to tell me who started those nasty rumors about you? Giving her a sad smile I shook my head. She sighed and wished me a good night, as did Tsubaki. After leaving the council room I ran home and started unpacking my things. Tomorrow was Sunday, so that idiot's date tomorrow, so knew him he would probably meet with her at the fountain in the park. I have nothing better to do, so might as well scout this date and see what's going to happen. It might be entertaining if she is only doing this to humiliate him, so I am looking forward to this now. I finished all of my homework for most of my classes and after having a cup of ramen I stripped down to my underwear and went to sleep. Tomorrow will be interesting to say the least. Next day, park fountain. I was standing by some trees in the park waiting for that idiot to show up with his date. First I wanted to make sure he had a date in the first place, and then I wanted to see what she would do to him. Soon I heard footsteps and hid behind the tree and saw Issei with a black hair girl approaching me. She had purple eyes and was wearing a purple dress that showed off her amazing figure. I could see her large breasts were showing through, which I saw Issei had his eyes glued on the whole time. Honestly, is that all he is interested in when looking at women? Because it's pathetic, but I am watching him on a date instead of doing something else, so what does that make me? Issei, could you do me a favor? She was asking him for something. From the look on his face he was thinking something perverted or having a kiss from her, but I am more leaning on him having a perverted thought, really. Of course. Would you die for me? What? Did I hear her correctly? Before he could ask what she meant, she suddenly transformed in front of my eyes. Her outfit disappeared and now she was wearing a bondage outfit that was barely covering her body. Issei was too shocked and into seeing her breasts to notice what I saw was now through his stomach. Some pink spear of some kind was just rammed through him, and by the time he realized it he was already choking on his own blood. As much as I wanted to help him, there was nothing I could do for him, so I decided to get the hell out of there. But before I could, I felt something piercing me through my back and saw another pink spear that was going through me now. Turning around I saw that the black hair girl was shocked to see me there and she looked upset. I slowly stumbled out of the tree line and up to her. After standing a few feet from her I collapsed on the ground, coughing up blood and feeling my lungs fill with it. She knelt down next to me and said with sorrow in her voice, "Sorry about this, but I can't have anyone knowing I was here. But since you're cute, I will give you something to remember me by in the next life." She leaned down and gave me a kiss on the lips, even though hers were now smeared with my blood. I looked at her with shock in my eyes and she said, "No matter what people say about us, that was my first kiss, and from your expression that was yours too. I will treasure it forever." With that said, she flapped her wings and disappeared into the night, leaving me and Issei to die there. Suddenly there was bright red light and out of it came Rios with black like bat wings coming out of her back. She looked down at Issei and said, "I won't let you die here, my cute little servant." With that she brought out 8 glowing pieces and they floated into Issei's chest, healing him on the spot. But he passed out from the pain, leaving her with him being unconscious. I turned over and coughed up some blood, causing Rias to look at me. When she saw who I was, she just frowned at me and said, "Well, I guess this night isn't all that bad. At least the world will be better off without you in it." She grabbed Issei and teleported away, leaving me to die and with tears running down my eyes. Who the hell did she think she was, telling me something like that? All I wanted was to be her friend, and this is how she treats me. No more. I will never care for her and hope that she suffers for everything she has done to me. All I could do was cry, knowing I would never know what really happened to my parents. I failed to keep my promise to Zenobia, and I would never see Sona in the council again. So I made one final wish for this life. I wish I could live so I could ask Sona to be my friend. With that I felt my world start fading, but before I lost consciousness I saw a blue light flickering next to me. I hoped that it was someone here to help me. Then my mind went blank. Sona's POV. It was a good thing that I had Tsubaki slip a summoning seal into Naruto's pocket, otherwise I wouldn't be able to find him. I had a funny feeling Naruto was going to watch Issei's date to see what would happen, and knowing Rias, this would most likely put him in danger. Why she was so cruel to him I don't know, but I know from now on I would not put up with it. Looking around, I was standing in the middle of the park next to the fountain looking for Naruto. I heard a cough and turned to see something that terrified me. Naruto was lying on the ground with a large gaping hole in his chest. I rushed over to him and checked his pulse and could feel he was still alive by the slightest margins. Looking around I saw that there was another pool of blood, and if I had to guess it belonged to Issei, which means Rias was here earlier, and that meant instead of healing Naruto to where he wouldn't die, she left him here to die. Oh, I was going to give her an earful along with telling my sister and her brother about this. Not only that, also about her bullying of him and manipulating the teachers and students to attacking and embarrassing him daily. While her brother was loving and caring, he didn't put up with pointless abuse, which is what she was putting Naruto through. Why is a mystery, but I knew for a fact there would be repercussions for all of this. Now, however, I needed to recruit Naruto before it is too late. So I started using my remaining pawn piece, but it was not strong enough to revive him. Now I was panicking until I remembered my sister gave me an unusual piece, so I decided to use it on him now. The piece looked like a king piece, only it had some kind of wings on it. Placing it on his chest, it glowed and sunk into him. But I noticed that something was glowing on his left hand, but as soon as it happened it disappeared altogether. Well, I will worry about this tomorrow. Right now I needed to get him home and healed up. I felt someone teleporting behind me and I saw that it was Tsubaki. She looked worried about Naruto after seeing him on the ground covered in dry blood. She kneeled down next to him and put her hand over his heart to feel if it was still beating. Tsubaki, I've revived him. He is going to be fine. However, he has suffered large amounts of damage and we need to accelerate the healing process. I understand, my king. The first shall do it then. I raised an eyebrow at this because Tsubaki didn't even want to touch Saji, let alone any of the other members of the peerage. But I guess she liked him more than I thought she did, but that upset me a little bit. I've liked him longer than all of them and they are all trying to win his affections now. But I will be the one that gets them first regardless. But now isn't the time for worrying about the war over Naruto's heart. Alright, Tsubaki, take him back to his place and start healing him by the skin method. I will be waiting for both of you tomorrow, so please make sure you're on time. Also be ready just in case Rias decides to show up, because I have a feeling the bad blood is going to boil over tomorrow. She nodded her head at me, and after putting Naruto on her shoulder with his head resting on top of her head, considering he was much taller than her, she teleported away. Looking around, I summoned a little magic and started washing the blood away. After making sure the blood was gone, I went back to my office and pulled out 2 crystals. One was red while the other was blue. As much as I hated calling them, now I needed to do this, otherwise problems in the future are going to pile up quickly and it might spark a war on campus. If his sacred gear is what I think it is, then he alone could wipe out half the city before killing Rias and her group. I didn't know what it was exactly, but I have a feeling about it, and it was both good and bad. Good because I've got a powerful piece, but bad because this was going to bring a lot of attention onto me because of him. But it won't matter, because once he is fully trained, then he will be a force of nature herself. With a deep breath I activated both crystals and 2 screens popped up now. One was a red hair male with blue-green eyes similar to Rias. He was wearing black and gold armor on his shoulders. Behind him was silver-haired woman wearing a maid's outfit. On the other screen was my sister, who had black hair tied into twin pigtails and wearing a pink magical girl outfit with a wand in her hand. The male was Sirzek Lucifer with his queen and wife Graphia, who ruled over the underworld, and he was Rias' older brother. My sister was Seraphal Leviathan, and she was head of foreign relations branch of the underworld. Both were important people in the underworld and were known to be the strongest male and female devils alive. While Graphia was the strongest queen, my sister was still better than her when it came to her unpredictable streak and the fact Graphia underestimated her when they were fighting. But now I was going to inform them about recent activities in my territory since this was originally Sea Tree land and Rias only moved her on my blessings. Greetings Lord Lucifer, sister, I bowed my head to them. Hello Sona, how are you? Sirzek was waving at me with a casual smile on his face. Grafia bowed her head to me but my sister shouted. Satan. It's good to see you, how have you been? All I could do was rub my forehead knowing my sister was acting like this because she cared about me too much, in my opinion similar to Sirzek for Rias, but I can't be distracted with this, I need to discuss the current conditions. Please be serious sister, I need to speak to both of you about what has been happening here in Kuo and it concerns Rias. Sirzek looked worried as did my sister, but I pressed on. Recently a boy named Naruto has been attending our school and in the first week he was trying to be friends with Rias and her peerage, however they thought he was asking them out and rejected him horribly and rubbed his orphan status in his face to put salt into the wound. My sister looked disgusted and Sirzek looked absolutely furious about this, along with Grafia eyes narrowed. Naruto hasn't told me the truth of what was happening and how the rumors about him being a sex deviant and how he sexually harassed them began. So ever since then he either spends his time ignoring hateful comments made about him or is fighting off bullies that are trying to assault him. Rias also uses her magic to influence the teachers to ignore him and let his bullying go on without them intervening. As far as I know, only 2 teachers have stopped the bullying when they are around and don't believe the rumors made about him. I see, well then this is bad. I will be sending Grafia to discuss her current behavior and informing her of some changes that are going to happen now. His maid nodded her head, but I added one more comment to seal the issue with Rias and Naruto. I forgot to mention something happened today that has me deeply disturbed. I ask, are you aware that Rias had her on someone in the school to join her peerage? Sirzek nodded his head along with my sister, but she had a frown on her face now. She was worried about what I was going to tell them after the stuff I told them about her vicious bullying of a human student that only asked to be her friend. Today Issei is now a member of her peerage, but I had a suspicion that Naruto would be checking on the date himself, so I snuck one of my summoning papers into his back pocket without him knowing about it. Luckily for me he wore the same pants from yesterday, otherwise I wouldn't have found him until tomorrow. Was he going to sabotage the date? I looked at Sirzek and answered. No. No matter how bad someone has treated Naruto, he has always believed in treating others with kindness or defending himself rather than attacking. I guess he was checking it out to see what was going to happen to him, but I guess he wasn't expecting they were both going to be killed by fallen angels. Now my sister was angry and worried because from her look them being in Kuo was something they were not aware of. Sirzek looked puzzled as well, but he motioned me to continue. From what I was able to gather, Rias managed to revive Issei, but when she saw Naruto she decided to leave him there to die instead of helping him like she could have. Now I could see my sister's eyes glowing with ice slowly starting to spread around her body, along with Sirzek's red and black aura was flowing around him. Looking at his eyes I saw they are now a frightening black with a small red glow in them, showing me that he was enraged. Sona's Sea Tree. I will send Grafia to confirm your story, and if it is true then I will be telling her to stay there for the 3 of us to have a meeting tomorrow. You best not be lying to me though, otherwise there will be greater repercussions for you. I swear on the honor of my family I am not lying to you, Lord Lucifer. He stared at me for a few moments and then nodded his head. Turning to his queen he ordered. Go to Kuo and check the school along with the park where this incident was supposed to have take place. If there is proof of Sona's claim, I want you punish Rias along with her peerage. Then you will inform her that she now work in the territory under Sona and anything she does now must go through her. Also, if there is another incident similar to what has happened already, she will be stripped of her position as heiress and be forced home where she will remain the rest of her life. Grafia bowed her head to him and teleported out of the room now. Looking over at my sister, she was taking a deep breath and said, Sona, if anything happens between Rias please inform me, because just because her brother is a Mao does not make her above our rules. She violated many of them today and is getting a slap on the wrist compared to what we should have done, but this will be the only time. Call me whenever you need me, okay? I nodded my head. Thank you, big sister. She smiled at me and her screen turned off. Now I was looking at an upset Lord Lucifer and we were waiting for Grafia's report. Hours passed of us just staring at each other when she appeared in my office in front of the screen and bowed to Lord Lucifer. Well? He asked with impatience in his voice. It's true. With those 2 words Sirzek sighed and then nodded his head. Grafia bowed to him and then looked at me and replied. I will be summoning Rias into your office tomorrow with Lord Sirzek here as well and presiding over the meeting. We will explain our anger to her and she will be given her punishment here and she will be informed of you gaining full control of the territory as well. I nodded my head, understanding that basically my office was just a room for the privacy to do this and punish her extensively. Well, it will be nice to get my territory back from her. Since she moved her, she seemed to think she owned the whole damn city. I was here first, and while her family may have claim on Japan as a whole, the city of Kuo was given to me when I moved to the human world first. My sister promised it to me, and when I was forced to give up part of it to her, I was extremely upset by this, and after getting here she started treating me like I was her underling to order as she pleases, but things are changing for the better in my opinion. Now the control is reversed and she must do what I say and inform me of all of her actions, or I can expel her from my city. I bowed to both Lord Sierzek and Grafia. I am sorry to bother with this so late in the day. Grafia shook her head and Sierzek gave me a small smile. It's no problem, Sona. I understand you had to call us because of this getting out of hand. I can also tell you're trying to keep problems from getting out of control when Naruto and Rias meet again. Best to keep a war from happening by dealing with one side before they can start. Yes, but I let this bullying go on for months when I should have said something earlier. I felt Grafia grabbing my shoulder, causing me to see her small smile when she sternly replied. You were hoping your friend would stop on her own accord, but she didn't, and now you are bringing us in to deal with her. Don't worry about it, we'll deal with this in the morning, so why don't you go home and get some sleep? Yes, I also have to talk to my new piece and introduce him to the world of devils. I stood up from my desk and bowed to both of them and left my office for my house. Hopefully the meeting tomorrow goes well and we can avoid a major conflict. I hope Naruto is okay. Next morning. Naruto Pav. I felt comfortable, more than I ever have in my life. The feeling of warmth was unusual from my normal pillows. Rubbing my face into the pillow, I noticed that it let out a low moan. My entire body froze up. Pillows don't moan as far as I knew. Slowly I opened my eyes and saw a pair of breasts that I was rubbing my face into. Looking up, I saw that it was Tsubaki from the student council. She was sleeping peacefully, so I tried my best to hide my scream of shock. Looking at her a little more closely, I saw that she was naked on my bed. Looking around, I saw that I was naked as well, which made me worried about if I had morning wood and accidentally rubbed up against her. Crawling out of bed, I went to my closet and saw that only my uniform was there, but the weirdest thing was that my casual clothes were gone. How is that possible? I tried recalling what happened yesterday and then it hit me. The girl with black wings that was wearing some kind of bondage outfit. Issei being on a date and then being impaled by some kind of spear. And then me being impaled by her spear next. She pitied me and then gave me my first kiss on the lips, then she left me there dying by the fountain. Rias showing up to heal the pervert, I think, but insulting me by saying the world was better off without me in it and then leaving me to die there. After that I remember wishing to see Sona so I could ask her to be my friend along with the rest of the student council, but after that I can't recall what happened to me. Looking at my uniform, I grabbed it and took it with me into the shower. I had a quick shower and changed into my school uniform and walked back into my bedroom. Something was off, though I could feel it, not just because Tsubaki was in my bed, but something about me has changed. My body, it felt stronger and I felt myself lighter than before, but I didn't know why. When I was in the sunlight I felt weaker than when I was in the dark. Weird really, but the thing that bothered me now was that I could feel something off with my left hand, but I couldn't place it. It itched and felt like something was building inside of my arm. I heard a yawn and saw Tsubaki was rubbing the sleep out of her eyes and she was sitting up now. She grabbed her glasses from the table next to my bed and looked at me with a smile on her face, but before she could say anything I turned away from her and kept my eyes close. My cheeks were red hot and I was blushing up a storm. She had a pout on her face. I didn't know for sure, but I was confident that she did. Naruto-kun, why are you looking away from me? It's inappropriate for a man to see a woman naked unless they are dating. She giggled at this and I heard her footsteps behind me before she had her arms around my neck. Her breasts were pushed into my back and she was rubbing her nipples, causing me to get even redder in the face. It's okay, Naruto, you can look if you want. Please Tsubaki, please get dressed. She tightened her grip on me. Not until you start calling me Tsubaki-chan. I nodded my head rapidly and she laughed at my red face. She got off my back and started getting dressed until she asked me to help her with her bra. Turning around, I saw her standing there with her back to me wearing on a pair of blue panties, causing me to swallow some saliva and trying to stop a nosebleed. This is so weird, I pointed out while helping her clip the bra behind her back. You'll get used to it, Naruto-kun. That's what I am worried about, honestly. After making sure her bra was one, she grabbed her uniform and started putting on her long white socks, showing off her amazing underwear-clad body. Her bra looked like it barely held her breasts in and her panties were scandalous, but they were still very erotic since they are maybe a size too small for her. Along with her long black hair, she looked alluring to the point I was feeling myself getting hard just by looking at her. But I quickly pinched myself and tried to imagine things to make my hard-on go away. After putting her socks on, he then put her white top on along with the cape and then the short skirt. Finally her shoes went on and she was fully dressed in her uniform. I felt myself disappointed by this. Then I pinched myself again, trying to get rid of such inappropriate thoughts. So Naruto-kun, enjoy the show. Sorry, it was in reverse order. She was leaning on my bed with a beautiful smile on her face. Is that a trick question? No matter how I answered it, I would either be considered a pervert or a bastard, but she only laughed at that and stood up from my bed. We both proceeded downstairs and she started making us breakfast of orange juice and an omelette with some vegetables and cheese mixed with the meat. After cooking for a little bit, she then set out 2 plates for us and sat down next to me at my small table. We proceeded to eat, but she said, "You didn't answer my earlier question, Naruto-kun." I choked a little bit on my meal and blurted out, "Yes, I did." I slapped my hand over my mouth and she only laughed at this, along with having a blush on her face. Sighing, I decided to ask her why she was here in the first place. "Tsubaki, why are you here exactly?" "Well, do you remember what happened to you yesterday?" My eyes widened and I shouted, "Wait, are you saying everything that happened to me yesterday really happened?" I didn't know if it was some freaky dream or not, but now it confirms it really did happen. "Yes, it did, but I have to tell you that you being killed there was a complete accident." "If that's the case and I died, then how am I still alive now?" "I will allow President to explain right now. Finish your breakfast. You have a long day ahead of you today." She then started eating her meal again and I started on my again, but at a much slower pace. My thoughts are scattered, to be honest. I mean, really, how is it possible? That girl killed me and now I am alive, even though I had a gaping hole in my stomach. But that explains why my clothes are gone, because if that really happened, Tsubaki would have thrown them out since they were so bloody. After finishing our breakfast and washing the dishes, we gathered our bags and started for the school. Walking up the street with her next to me drew a lot of attention from some of our schoolmates, mostly shock of the fact that she was with me instead of being with Sona. Plus, with my reputation, why would she be with me right now? Honestly, the whispers were getting old and I just wanted to get to school without trouble, but that was not to be. Once we entered the grounds and were heading for the student council office, I felt something smash into the side of my head. Looking at me, Tsubaki saw that I was beamed by a rock, causing me to bleed from the side of my head. She looked behind us and saw that it was 2 male students smiling at us and they were bouncing rocks in their hands. "Hey jackass, how about you leave the woman alone? She doesn't want to be associated to someone like you." They started laughing at his comment, but Tsubaki looked angry. Her facial expression turned emotionless after we left my place, but from the looks of it she was feeling extremely angry. She stood up and walked up to the 2 boys before she grabbed the rocks they were carrying. She showed them in her hand and then crushed them into dust. That was a warning from her to either get lost or that would be them. They were scared, but one of them decided to get tough and tried to grab her. Now my temper rose and I quickly got between them and grabbed the boy's extended arm. I felt my grip slowly crushing his wrist with the sound of his bones popping was anything to go by. He was on the ground now begging me to stop and his friend tried to blindside me, but I saw him coming and caught his fist and started crushing it. Now both boys were screaming in pain from what I was doing and begging me to stop. I don't remember being this strong and I wasn't really trying, to be honest. I could see that many of the students were disturbed with what I was doing, but I didn't care. They were going to attack Tsubaki, so they were getting what they deserved. Urza soon came running with some students and saw the situation. "What the hell is going on?" Everyone started shouting how I was hurting these 2 boys because they were trying to save Tsubaki from me, but Urza shouted, "Shut up, all of you." Everyone was dead silent now and Urza looked over at Tsubaki. I was walking with my new student council member and these 2 boys decided to beam him in the side of the head with a rock. After I took the rocks from their hands, they threatened me with physical force, so Naruto-san decided to interfere. Urza nodded her head and came up to me. "Naruto." She put her hand on my shoulder and continued, "I will take it from here, okay?" I nodded my head and released my grip on both boys, but they were sore about being manhandled, so they tried to charge me, but Urza was in front of them with a glare on her face, with her grabbing both of them by one of their ears. Both boys were complaining about this, but she wouldn't hear it and started dragging them to the headmaster's office so they could receive their punishment. Looking at Tsubaki, she nodded her head at me and we continued into the school. Thinking back to the situation, I remember hearing her say something about me being a student council member. Me, seriously, I mean, that was insane, really. I never agreed to it, but I guess in theory it might have something to do with me still being alive, so I would go along with this just so I can get a better understanding on what was going on now, especially if she explains what the hell happened to me yesterday along with the woman who had black feather wings. Arriving at the student council room, we could hear some people talking on the other side and one of them was shouting. How this wasn't hearable in the hallway I wouldn't understand, but it sounded intense. Soon the door was slammed open and out of it came Rias, who had an angry look on her face. When she saw me, her anger peaked and she started making a move for me, but Tsubaki got between her and me and she was growling at her. Before things could escalate, a sliver hair woman wearing a maid's outfit came out of the room and grabbed Rias by the shoulder. She looked at her and saw that she was shaking her head and motioning her to leave. Rias looked back at me and said, "Watch yourself, orphan. Sona won't always be there to protect you." Then she started stomping away with the silver hair woman watching her with disappointment in her eyes. Tsubaki looked at me with concern, but I gave her a reassuring smile. The maid bowed to us and said, "I apologize about Ryo's behavior, Tsubaki and Naruto." I raised an eyebrow that she knew my name, but if she knew Sona, that meant she must have told her. "Lady Graphia, what brings you here?" "Problems with Rias and her recent actions as of late. Don't worry, they have been settled and she is now on notice." She turned to me and gave me a small reassuring smile. "If she bothers you or tries anything against you, please let Sona know and I will deal with her, okay?" I blushed at her beautiful smile and nodded meekly. With that said, she wandered down the halls after her leaving me and Tsubaki, looking into the student council room where Sona was sitting along with a red hair man that looked a lot like Rias. Upon entering the room, Tsubaki bowed to the man and to her place behind Sona. Following her example, I bowed to him and said, "Greetings sir, I am Naruto, it's a pleasure to meet you." He smiled at me and replied, "It's good to meet you Naruto, I am Sirzek Gremory, but you can just call me Sirzek." I nodded my head and said, "Thank you Lord Sirzek." Sona sent me an approving nod and motioned me for me to take a seat in front of her and Sirzek. I did, and now I was nervous. "Sorry to bring you in so early in the day Naruto," Sona said. "It's fine, but I am kinda curious about what's going on. I mean, with me dying last night, then with me still being alive, and the fact that Tsubaki was in my house, it's all very confusing." Sona nodded her head and she gave me a smile, putting me a little more at ease. "I understand your confusion, but no, I will clear everything up for you. However, I want you to keep an open mind about the things you're about to hear, okay?" I nodded my head and then she started, "Well, first off, you really did die yesterday." Well, that was blunt and to the point, but I guess that was the thing about Sona that will always be true. She will get to the point when she has to. "If that's the case, then how am I alive then?" "Simple Naruto, I revived you as one of my servants, so you know everyone in this room is a devil." With that said, she sprouted out the same bat wings that Rias had last night along with Sirzek and Tsubaki. I was freaking out a little bit, but she told me, "You have a pair as well." Now I looked at her like she was crazy, but I imagined wings out of my back and soon I felt something coming out of my back. Looking behind me, they were wings alright, but something was off about them. They weren't like everyone else's wings, but they seemed to have a different shape and size. Mine looked more like a pair of angel wings, but they were leather-like in texture and no feathers as well. Sona looked confused about my wings, as did Sirzek, who was now walking around my wings. "Fascinating, I've never seen wings like these before." He then started running one of his hands on my wings, causing me to feel uncomfortable, so I stammered out, "Lord Sirzek, could you leave my wings alone please?" He immediately saw my discomfort and released his grip on my wings. "Sorry, but I have to say that your wings are definitely not normal Naruto. If anything, I would say they stand out when you compare them to most species with wings. They look familiar, but I can't place it for the life of me." Forgive me, but can we get back to the point where you said you're all devils?" Sona nodded her head and she retracted her wings. "As I was saying, I revived you with one of my peerage pieces, thus turning you into a devil and making you one of my servants." I nodded my head at this. Made sense so far. "Also, you should know that while you may be a servant, I will not treat you as such, since I view everyone in my peerage as my family and love them as such. At least I didn't get a stuck-up bitch as my master." But this raised the question of what exactly a peerage was. Sirzek decided to intervene instead though. "I am guessing you want to know about peerages in general. Well, the thing is, they are chess pieces with demonic power capable of reincarnating many specific beings into devils. Some are gathered to compete in raiding games and others are gathered for selfish reasons. Sona is the king, which means she is the leader of the peerage and the most important piece in a ratings game. So everyone in the student council is a member of your peerage, I am guessing." Sona and Sirzek looked surprised by my deduction, but they nodded their heads. Made sense why almost no one could get into the council unless Sona allowed them, meaning they had to become a member of her peerage. "Now Naruto, is there anything else you wanted to know?" I looked at Sirzek and then at Sona and said, "Who was that girl that killed me last night? I know she wasn't a devil, but I am still not sure what exactly." "Yes, she is a fallen angel. Angels that have fallen from heaven because of the sins they have committed. Along with us, they are one of the 3 groups that makes up the biblical faction. They are the smallest group when it comes to numbers, but they are known to recruit rogue exorcists, thus giving them an edge in battle in some cases." "Okay, so her black wings signify she is a fallen angel, got it. My next question is more for you, Sona." She motioned for me to continue. "Why did you revive me? I mean, I am a nobody with no special talents, so why did you bother with me?" Sona got up from her desk and walked in front of me. She looked me in the eyes and answered with conviction, "You are important to me, Naruto. I heard your wish that you wanted me to be your friend, and I answered because I want to be your friend as well." She gave me a smile and it caused me to let loose a few tears that I now was rubbing to get rid of. She leaned into me and gave me a hug and whispered to me, "You are worth more than gold to me, and I would have recruited you even if you were a nobody. Always remember this." She separated from me and gave me a light kiss on the cheek. My cheeks reddened from the kiss and Sierzek was sending me a wink showing he was thinking more than friendship was going on here. Sona returned to her seat and then continued with her explanation. There is something else, Naruto. After I revived you I noticed your left hand seemed glowing and then it disappeared. Tell me, is there some odd feeling you are having going through your arm right now? I nodded my head considering I felt something pulsing in my arm and it was uncomfortable. Well then this confirms my theory that you have a sacred gear. A what? Sierzek stepped in again. A sacred gear are powerful artifacts made by God that are sealed into humans at random. Some are useful or useless while some like Longinus gears are incredibly powerful and are sought by everyone. I nodded my head at his explanation. He then continued, if you really do feel something going through your arm then I want you to concentrate on it and try to push it to the surface. I closed my eyes and started pushing the energy in my arm outward hoping for something to happen. Soon there was a bright red light and on my left arm now was a red gauntlet that had a green jewel in the center. It came up close to my elbow showing off a golden design along the arm length. Well, ill be damned. Naruto, you wield a Longinus gear known as the boosted gear. This sacred gear can increase your power every 10 seconds thus making stronger than before. However, it consumes your stamina so use it wisely, Sierzek told me with a large smile on his face. Sona looked ecstatic while Tsubaki looked shocked at the development. So this is a good thing? Sona looked at me with surprise. This is better than good, you're literally a powerhouse now with the right training. Yes, while I've enjoyed this I must be off so I will see you all sometime soon. I along with Sona and Tsubaki bowed to Sierzek as he teleported out of the room. It was pretty cool but it reminded me of Rias so I was a bit put off by it. Looking back at Sona I asked. So am I going to meet the rest of the peerage later today? Yes, but we have a meeting with Rias as a get-together and to inform everyone of the changes that are happening around here. I was uncomfortable going to the occult research club so I asked. Can I skip this meeting? I really don't want to go there today. Sona looked conflicted on the matter but she sternly replied. No, you have to go. I know you don't want to be there but it's mandatory. Don't worry though, if Rias tries anything or her peerage we will be there to back you up. I nodded my head and looked up at the clock. It was about time for my first class to start so I picked up my bag and bowed to Sona and Tsubaki. My first class is about to begin, I have to go. Very well, but please note the meeting is after classes are over. I nodded my head and headed out of the council room and started for my homeroom. Nothing could bring me down now so I couldn't hear the kids making rumors about what I did to the two boys earlier today. End of school day. I was standing next to Tsubaki with the rest of the peerage behind us and Sona in the front. Among us was a blue hair girl that looked like a tomboy and she has blue eyes. Next to her is a white hair girl with a large chest and blue-green eyes who was in front a brown hair girl in twin pigtails. Next to that girl was a girl with reddish-brown hair and brown eyes. After them there was a blonde hair boy standing next to Sona with a blush on his face with a girl with brown hair in two short braids along with brown eyes watching him with annoyance. From what Sona told me this was most of her peerage assembled. Her other knight had duties as a Grim Reaper so she was gone often and her other rook was in college so he was busy there and couldn't be seen on a high school campus without raising questions. The other two pawns were doing contracts for some clients so they couldn't attend. So everyone here were going to be attending the meeting today and making sure things don't get too heated between Rias and myself. I've known these people for a while and have gotten to know most of them. While the girls were always happy to see me, Saji made it well known he was jealous of how much time I spend with the girls, especially Sona, and he did whatever he could to take their attention back. This usually ended with him getting smacked around because he eventually annoys them to the point they can't focus on anything. But even with that, Saji was a good guy, he was fun to hang around with, but he was driven by his lust at some points and it blinds him, but at least he knew control unlike Issei and his stupid friends. We arrived at an abandoned building outside of the school and once we entered the building I felt oddly at home now. Sona explained to me that devils are more acquainted to dark places than places of light like churches are a no-go for them. After going up a few floors Sona knocked on a door and we heard a muffled voice tell us to enter. Upon walking into the room I saw the occult research club was scattered around the room with Rias and Akeno behind a large desk in the front of the room. Kaneko was occupying one of the couches and was munching on some sweets with Kiba leaning on the wall behind her with that fake smile on his face. On the other couch was Issei who looked confused with what was going on but he was eyeing some of the members with large chests with what I would call pervert vision. Greetings Sona, I see you've brought most of your peerage for this meet and greet. She was looking at me with hatred flooding her eyes. But this time I looked straight her and didn't back down from her stare. While I knew she could kill me I was not going to back down if she wanted to start a fight with me. Yes, I've brought most of them so we could introduce some of our new pieces to each other. Wait, you mean there are other devils in the school? Issei shouted. Rias then introduced Sona by her real name prompting Issei to continue. Whoa, I didn't think there were more devils here. Geez, didn't your king tell you anything? Saji had a smug look on his face, which prompted Sona to smack him on the back of his head. Saji, he didn't know because he has only been a devil for a day. Saji looked upset at being smacked but nodded his head at understanding. Sona motioned for both of us to move forward and we were now standing in front of Issei. Saji, Sona's pawn. Whoa, you're a pawn too, to be in the same standings as a member of the perverted trio, how disgusting. This started a heated stare down between the two of them which led to them shouting. Just so you know, I was worth 4 pieces, Saji replied with a smug look on his face. Issei was worth 8 pieces, Rias retorted with a grin on her face. What, isn't that like all of the pieces? To think that a pervert like him is worth that many. Soon a scuffle started between the two until Sona and Rias separated them from each other. Both guys were standing in front of each other and trying to crush the other's hand in the handshake. Issei then comes up to me and when I extended my hand to him he instead spit in my face. Sona and the council were shocked by such disrespectful display where the occult research club looked on with approval. I was a patient guy but this was what broke my patience with him. I glared at him while he laughed at me. You aren't even worth shaking hands with since you are worth nothing compared to me, devil or not. Before he could continue laughing I felt something pulsing inside of me, so like my sacred gear I pushed it forward and then in my right hand came out a sword. This blade was a katana with a gold handle with a black skull acting as the butt of the blade. The blade was a good few size in length. Bringing the blade up I placed the tip of my blade at his throat causing him to gulp in fear. Do you want to try that again? He back up but Kiba started approaching me to try and protect Issei. Before he could close in on me I swung my blade at him sending a blue blade of energy at him forcing him to block it with his own sword. Before things could escalate Sona shouted. Enough. Rias, control your servants because you're already on thin ice as it is. Rias looked ready to say something but she bit her tongue instead and signaled Kiba to withdraw. He shot me a glare and went back to where he was standing before. Issei had already summoned his sacred gear, which was some kind of gold gauntlet on his right hand. I won't let you get away with that, you piece of trash. I looked at him with calmness in my eyes and just got ready for a fight, but before he could move Tsubaki got in between each of us and replied with coldness in her voice. You will back off or I will personally break you here and now. Issei looked like he was going to try anyway but Kaneko grabbed him and put him back on the couch. She looked at me and scoffed at me causing me to see that being disrespected I was expecting it but this was getting ridiculous. Now that is out of the way I think it's time to clear some things up with our peerages here. Sona was looking at everyone in the room and then at Rias. She looked away from her with a huff and Sona continued. Due to certain situations that have been happening lately there is a few changes around her now. Firstly, I am the sole owner of this territory, which means that everything that Rias' peerage does now has to go through me. If anyone makes a move against someone in my peerage in any way, shape, form, then this will lead to your brother getting involved, Rias. Next, the recent activity with the school bullying ends now. No more manipulating the human students and teachers. If I find out this is still going on I will find out which one of you it is and I will guarantee you will be punished extensively. It's not our fault that he's a loser. Issei's comment got Sona's attention and she was about to chew him out, however Rias had an idea about getting control again. How about a wager, Sona? Since you're so confident that Naruto is not worthless, how about we have him and Issei fight in about a month's time? Sona looked at me and I nodded my head and she then asked. What are the wagers? When Issei wins you have to give me back partial control of the territory again. But if he somehow wins then you can lay claim to any future territory here in Japan that you are interested in. So what do you say? I could see Sona was conflicted but I winked at her telling her to trust me with this task. Finally she sighed and said. Fine, in a month's time both of our pieces will fight and we will see who had the better investment. With that agreed on we were leaving the room until we heard Rias ask Sona. By the way, you should know his pawn traits will be useless against Issei, right? He's not a pawn, he's that dud piece that my sister gave me when I was little. When she said that Rias broke out in a laughing hysterics and started to make mocking comments about me being even more useless than she thought. Soon her whole peerage joined in insulting me until Sona finally fired a round of magic into the ceiling, then telling them to shut the hell up or she would do it for them. While she knew she didn't have the same raw strength as them, she can still outthink all of them and force them into submission, plus she would get the last laugh in the end. With her piece said we all left the building and headed out of the occult research club. I breathed a sigh of relief knowing I didn't have to deal with them anymore today. Naruto. I looked over at Sona and she had her stern face on. I will be calling my sister about asking her to send someone to train you for the month. Be ready because if she sends her she will run you into the ground. I bowed my head to her and asked about the sword in my hand. Is this sword a sacred gear too? No. Sona was shaking her head now because she honestly didn't know what it was. I don't know what it is but I do know that you seem to be the only one capable to use it, so please be careful with it, okay? I will president, but if you'll excuse me, I have to get home and work on some homework and get some sleep for my training tomorrow. Alright, good night Naruto. Everyone in the peerage also wished me a good night and I gave one to them and headed away from the school. I was tempted to use my wings to get home quickly, but I wanted the exercise, so I just ran home. Halfway home I noticed something was off. It felt like there was someone behind me, but I couldn't tell who it was. They were hiding themselves from my natural senses, but I could just feel them behind me thanks to my new enhanced senses. Stopping about halfway to my place, I spoke loudly. I know you are there, so please come out. Hearing a rustling noise in a nearby bush, I saw a young girl emerging. She resembled a small child that was wearing a single tight black outfit with it cut around the center of the outfit. On her arms was black belts that were wrapped 2 for each arm. The first set were by her shoulder and the other set was below her elbow. Her top and leggings she was wearing were black and white in color with diamond-shaped figures going out from her leggings and connecting to her top. She was not wearing a skirt, so I could see the flimsy panties she was wearing that buried in her ass and only barely covered her crotch. I noticed she had 2 more belts, one around her neck that was hanging loosely and the other was wrapped underneath her chest. Her face had 2 stitch scars running down both cheeks and her hands were wrapped in tape. She was wearing purple heel shoes to go with her outfit. Her features are what intrigued me because she had short white hair that spaced outward and she had bright green eyes along with a blank look on her face. She was carrying 2 purple and black daggers in her hand that were shaped in an odd way with a black handle with a circle in the bottom of the blade that extended straight up. On her back she had a pack full of daggers and different small-shaped cutting tools. Overall she looked intimidating, but she also looked like a pint-sized assassin. Well, hello there young lady, who might you be? Instead of answering me, she threw 2 small daggers at me, causing me to dodge them. But she immediately closed the distance between us and brought out her 2 daggers to attack me. I jumped away from her attack and summoned my sword. While I wasn't versed in using a sword, I still knew enough from my lessons for Griselda how to use the basics of the sword, so I managed to block her attack and send her back a few feet. She charged me again with 1 dagger held in a reverse grip and the other one she was swinging with downward. I brought my sword up to meet her slash and then I skid my blade across hers and brought it down to block her second dagger's attack. After doing that, I pushed her blade off of my mine, causing her to fall backwards slightly. But she quickly recovered and she rotated the blade in her hand and brought it in a side slash. I dodged the attack by taking a step back and then lunged at her with my blade going for her throat. But as she quickly leapt over me, then spinning like a tornado, she was brought her daggers down in a spinning motion. I blocked her multiple attacks, but I soon felt her feet plant themselves into my face, kicking off me and sending me backwards. Her kick hurt like hell, but I recovered quickly and sent a kick of my own into her chest while she was still in midair. This time she went flying into a tree, crashing into it with a thud. She slumped over for a second but then sprung back to life. She charged at me with her 2 daggers following behind her. Leaping into the air, she brought both of her blades together in a diagonal twin slash and aimed for my head. But I ducked under her attack, and when behind her I swung my blade at her back, but she spun around quickly and blocked my attack with both of her blades. Sparks flew from the impact, and after our blades crossed each other she landed in crouched position. She then went for another blade in her bag and threw it at me, but I dodged it. However, she now was in front of me with both of her blades at the side of my neck with her legs wrapped around my back. Checkmate. Her voice was quiet, but it sounded more like a child with a form of corrupted innocence in it. Like a child of war, one guess is the best way to explain it. I waited for her to cut off my head, but she just kicked off my back and landed on the ground. She put her daggers at her side and was now staring at me with the same blank look from before. I turned to ask her what the hell that was about, but she said, "Mid-class. Okay, hold up, what's going on?" I asked her, and all I got was a slight tilt of her head. "I was testing you." "Okay, but by whose orders?" She just blinked at me, but then she had a moment of realization. She bowed her head at me and answered, "Apologies, I am Jack the Ripper. I am a member of Sona's peerage. I am her pawn. I am also the one that tests out all the new members to see where they stand and what they need to be taught." "Wait, are the Jack the Ripper from England? The most notorious serial killer in history?" She nodded her head, making me wonder how old she was exactly now. But that was something for a later time. I wanted to know how I did, considering today is my first day. "Okay, so how did I do?" I was curious now. If she was the one that tested everybody, that meant she must be really strong. Made sense. I could barely keep up with her speed, and she showed versatility when I hit her or blocked her attacks. She also had enough sense to change her tactics when she noticed the first strategy wasn't working for her and moved on to a different strategy altogether. I would say you are about mid-class as far as skills go. You are well versed at the basics of using a sword in close-quarter combat. However, you are still unused to facing foes who are using magic, and you are unable to use your own magic or sacred gear. I nodded my head at her evaluation. It made sense, really. However, she continued, "Out of everyone that I've tested, you are definitely the best I've seen coming in. However, How you work to increase your strength will be on your determination to improve. Watch me starting tomorrow. I will start training to get stronger no matter what. Sona is counting on me, so I can't afford to let her down. Jack nodded her head at me and then held out her hand, showing me a green gemstone. I've recorded everything from this fight along with my evaluation and what you've just said. Now I will be sending this to President. A blue summoning circle sprung to life and a small bat flew up to her. She puts the gemstone in its mouth and it swallows it before taking off. I was wondering now how Sona would get it out of the bat since it just ate it. President will have the gemstone when my familiar throws it back up. Could she read my mind? No, you're just an easy person to read. She then turned away from me and started walking back to the forest line. I shouted at her. Hey, where are you going? To find a tree to sleep in. Why? She looked at me with a curious glance. Well, if you have no place to go, how about you stay at my place for the time being? She looked surprised by my offer. She stared at me for a few minutes before she finally nodded her head slowly. So I lead her back to my apartment, and after getting most of my schoolwork done, I pulled a sleeping bag out of my closet. As soon as I sat it on the ground, she immediately got onto the bag. What are you doing? This is my sleeping bag, you get the bed. She looked really surprised by this. Are you sure? I mean, this is good enough for me. No, you're my guest and I would feel bad if I left you on the floor instead of my bed. Look, I am going to brush my teeth, so why don't you change and hop into bed? I went into the bathroom and shut the door so I didn't feel her eyes on me while I got ready for bed. After making sure I rinsed my teeth and changed into my boxers with a shirt, I walked back into the room to see her now in bed. She had the cover up to her neck and by the looks of it she wasn't sure what to do. I sighed and then went over to the bed and said, all you have to do now is get comfortable and then sleep. She nodded her head and turned over and crawled into a little ball. Turning the lights off, I hopped into my sleeping bag and said, good night, Jack. Before I drifted asleep, I heard her whisper, good night, Naruto. I woke up with my back feeling very sore. Remembering I slept on the floor, I also remembered meeting Jack yesterday and everything she told me. Trying to get up, I felt something preventing me from moving on my chest. So lifting up the blanket for my sleeping bag, I looked and saw something that nearly gave me a heart attack. Jack was sleeping on my chest with her being naked. She had a cute look on her face that made it almost sinful to wake her up. But I had school today and had to talk to Sona about what my training is going to be for my match with Issei. While I figured I could take that idiot in a fight at our sacred gears into the mix, and this put the whole thing into the air. So better to train and floor him knowing I did everything I could rather than take it easy and underestimate him. But back to my current issue, I needed to wake up Jack, so with a slight nudge into her side she started groaning. She tried curling into my chest even more, but a few more nudges and she was up, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. But she wasn't covering herself and I felt bad at looking at her naked body, so I turned away from her. Morning, Naruto-kun. Morning, Jack, how are you today? She looked at me with confusion in her eyes and responded, I am fine, but why are you looking away from me, Naruto-kun? Well, you're naked and it's rude of a guy to look at someone that is naked when they are not in a relationship. But you did this with Tsubaki-senpai, so I thought you would like this kind of thing. My eyes went wide. How long had she been spying on me from the shadow? No matter. Look, what Tsubaki-senpai was doing was that she was healing me, not doing that to make me happy. But honestly, I couldn't get her out of my head now. She was so beautiful with her natural looks and it makes me wonder why she isn't the talk of the school. But I remembered she was like Sona Kaichu, very modest and not wanting to flaunt her body for everyone to see. But being a natural beauty, I could definitely say with honesty that she was much more attractive than the rest of the girls in the school, only being surpassed by Sona Kaichu. There was something about her that made her perfect in my mind, and I don't know what. Oh well, I'll think about them later. Come on, Jack. I'll take a shower while you are getting your stuff together and then make breakfast for both of us. She looked surprised about having breakfast with me, but from what I could see she was a poor abused girl that only wanted to be loved, so I was going to try and make her feel wanted. I got out from the sleeping bag and slipped into the shower and started washing myself. Once I was done with that stuff, I exited my room with a towel around my waist and washing my hair. Jack soon passed me and looked at the shower with confusion. I then said, the nozzle releases the water and the knobs control how hot or cold the water is, and the shampoo and conditioner are in that one bottle over there. The body wash and soap are next to it. Be careful though, because the soap gets slippery, okay? Okay. Anything else? Yeah, make sure to keep your eyes closed when applying because that stuff will burn your eyes if you're not careful. Also keep your mouth closed too, okay? Don't want you to get some kind of poisoning from it. I sweat dropped because I was now watching her write those down on a notebook she got from somewhere and posted them on the wall of the shower. At this point she shut the door and turned on the shower, and this left me to change into my uniform and headed downstairs and made both of eggs and bacon for us today. Look likes I will have to go to store later today and get more food. Feeding people really wipes out your supplies when it is only meant for one person. I finished breakfast when Jack came downstairs and surprisingly she was wearing the school uniform without the cape on it. You're a student? Yes, I am a first year, so you are my senpai Naruto-kun. Take good care of me. I nodded my head and she took a seat at the table and I placed some food in front of her. She looked at me questioningly and I gave her the nod. She had a gleam in her eyes now and started eating her food with almost a heavenly look on her face. I wasn't that great of cook, but I could make some good food when I actually tried. That reminds me, I will have to go to work today and hopefully get a lot of tips today. So after Jack and I were done eating our breakfasts and brushed our teeth, we proceeded out of my house and down the street with her carrying her bag on her shoulder. I could see that underneath her sleeves were some small knives barely visible to the naked eye. Guess she really is paranoid, but those scars on her cheeks had to come from somewhere, I guess. The walk to school was boring really. No one really bothered us, but from some of the looks I saw from the students they looked confused. They weren't making snide remarks at me anymore, but I could still feel they had some resentment against me. Funniest thing about the situation was that everyone was looking at Jack as the cutest thing possible, with the girls awing at her and the guys thinking she was so adorable. Jack didn't like the attention, so she came next to me and grabbed my hand for comfort. While some would think of this as an intimate gesture, I could tell this was more because she was confused. She wasn't sure how to deal with the situation of people cooing at her, so she wanted to grab onto something that was comforting for her. So I squeezed her hand to show I was here for her and she calmed down slightly. Everyone thought it was adorable that I was acting like an older brother to her, but the guys were jealous I had her attention on me. But I ignored those idiots and we proceeded to school. Hopefully I could avoid Rios group and not be bothered by them today. In class, after dropping off Jack at her class 1, proceeded for my class with Ms. Irina, or as some like to call her behind her back, bitch sensei. Honestly, I don't know why they did. She wasn't a bad teacher, she was just strict, that's all. Sitting in class 1, saw Kiba was glaring at me every so often, but when the teacher looked at him he smiled at her pretending to be listening. Truthfully, it was getting old and I wanted to send the guy flying, but that was something that would cause unneeded attention. The biggest issue for me is I was wondering if he was going to try something or not. Finally Ms. Irina slammed her hand on the desk and had an angry look on her face. The whole class was scared of this, but I could see her anger was mostly towards Kiba in this case, who was nervous of her glare. Is my lesson boring you to Mr. Yuto? No sensei, it's not. Really? Then why is it then I turn away from you? You just seemed intent at glaring at Mr. Uzumaki. Is there something you want to share with the rest of the class right now? No sensei. She sighed and pulled out a book from her bag and slammed it on Kiba's desk. Since you can't focus on the lesson, then I will give you something focus on while outside of my class. I want a report on this book by next week or I will throw you into detention faster than your head can spin. The class was stunned. I was too, pretty boy Kiba being punished? This was a first, to be honest. Sensei, I am sure this is something we could let slide, can't we? I could sense Kiba was using magic on the teacher, but from the looks of it, Irina, she wasn't budging under the spell, but she had a smile on her face. Alright, then you can work on this report in detention then if you think you're so special then. He was stunned. She withstood her spell and then she turned back to the board and continued her lecture. I guess she was trying to be lenient with him, but when he tried to get out of the report she figured she'd go with the detention. But my question is, how did she manage to avoid the spell? She was human, right, so she should have been easy to use magic on? Unless she already knows of the supernatural world and is hiding it from us. This is something I'll ask Kaichu about, but for now I got back to taking notes so I could avoid a report unlike Kiba. Ha, suck it, pretty boy. Last class of the day. I was sitting in my last class of the day, which was the cooking class with Urza sensei. She looked happy about something, but what I don't know. Finally we were all at our stations with Issei being partnered up with his buddies and Kiba with some random fangirl. I was without a partner again, but that was alright. I worked better alone in this class anyway. Alright, class 1, no, it's the end of the day, but I have an announcement. We have a new student joining us today. I raised an eyebrow at that and knew for a fact that I was the only one without a partner, so most likely they would be with me. There was a knock at the door and sensei said, "Come in and introduce yourself to your class." Soon the door opened and in came someone that had everybody blushing. She was gorgeous in my opinion, in the same league as Tsubaki, but still not Sona Kaichu's level, but still, she had the perverted trio already having nosebleeds, and Kiba was even blushing bright red at the sight of her. This girl had long red hair that was of a lighter coloring than Rias from what I could tell. Her hair was straight and smooth like red silk, and she had a light complexion to go with her amazing hair. Her eyes shone like green emeralds and they were filled with joy and a look of seduction in them. The thing I think all the boys were eyeing, thought especially those perverted idiots, was her amazing bust. That thing was definitely bigger than Rios and was on the grounds the biggest one I have ever seen in my life. While I wasn't a bust guy at times, I could still appreciate it when I saw one. Her school uniform was the same as most of the girls, but she was wearing it where her breasts were just hanging out for everyone to see. It looked like it fit her perfectly and didn't strain against her clothing like Rias did. The more I looked at her, the more she looked like a happier and kinder version of Rias with a greater alluring beauty. Hello everyone, I am Rebecca Gremery. I hope we have a great time together. Her smile made my heart skip a beat, and I could see the three perverted idiots were passed out on the floor from knowing she is related to Rias. Wait, she's related to Rias? Shit, well, there is hope that she won't be a complete asshole like her relative, whatever she was. I swear she could be passed off as her sister by how similar they look. Now, is there any questions for our transfer student? Are you related to Rias senpai? Figures one of the boys would ask that, and he looked like a dog in mating season. It was disgusting. I mean, I liked her too, but I knew better than to let my lust show. Devil or not, I was not going to be drooling over another Gremery that could be like Rias. We are related. She is my cousin. Her father is my uncle, making my mom his sister. We've grown up on different sides of the world, so I was allowed to study abroad. However, my mother thought it best I come to Kuo and spend some time with my dear cousin. Very well, Miss Rebecca, why don't you partner up with Naruto? Issei immediately jumped to his feet and shouted. Wait, you can't put her with him. The words in his mouth died the minute Urza-sensei looked straight at him with an evil glare in her eye with a crimson aura surrounding her. What can't I do, Mr. Hyodo? Her eyes were glowing red with fury and rage, just asking him to say something stupid. He backed down immediately and hid behind his friends to avoid Urza's wrath. With that fiasco done, Rebecca walked over to our station and put the apron around her body, which was strained because of her breasts. She looked over at me and gave me a big smile, which caused me to blush instantly. Honestly, she was beautiful, but I was hesitant in trusting a Gremery if they were like Rias. You must be Naruto. My cousin has told me so much about you. Really, and what great things did she tell you about me? She looked confused for a second, but then it dawned on her. Oh, I meant my cousin Sirzek. He was the one telling me things about you. The truth is that Rias and I aren't on speaking terms these days. She sighed, and we soon heard Urza give out instructions to make a cake dessert and she would taste it. During the baking process while I was spinning the dough, I asked, so what's the issues with you and Rias if it's not too much, because you look like you would enjoy being around her? She giggled at that. No, you're wrong about that. Ever since the day she gained her family magic from her mother, she started acting like she was better than me. Even with her being the heiress and all, instead of seeing me like family like I tried with her, she saw me more as a servant that should be lucky to be in her presence. Ever since then I have avoided her when I can. I nodded my head, and that definitely sounded like the Rias I've come to know, but that still raised the question of why she was here. I am here now to make sure that Rias doesn't try and use her magic on the other students and teachers again to bully you. Now this was news to me, and I know I would have to ask my king about this later, but right now I wanted to get to know the girl next to me. Well, since we're going to be partners for the rest of class, why don't we get to know each other? Before you ask me out on a date, that is. She laughed when my face turned hot red and I was staring at the table. I was kidding, but I wouldn't mind going out with someone as cute as you, sweet thing. I blushed even more, but then got my composure back, trying to remind myself of the things I've seen already. Then I thought about a naked Tsubaki and my face went cherry red again. Trying to calm myself down, I imagined the most disgusting things possible. Kiba making out with Issei. That made me pale instead, and I just blocked it from my mind now. Looking back at Rebecca while the cake was baking, I started off. Well, I was thinking stuff like, do you have any hobbies? Oh, well, I love to swim and sometimes enjoy a nice book. I nodded my head and she asked, what about you, any hobbies? Well, not really, other than training with my sword and occasionally working at my favorite restaurant. Not much time for anything other than school, really. Oh, you work? I nodded my head. Where at? The Butler Cafe near Town Square. She had a small gleam in her eye, and then it was gone when the cake dinged. Everyone started turning in their desserts for the teacher to taste and see what their grades were. Kiba and his partner received a B only because part of it was burnt, and she wasn't happy about that. He looked like he wanted to protest this, but she gave him a flat look and he shut up immediately. Issei and his friends made something, but I couldn't tell what it was. It was lumpy and black, and in some cases I saw it move to an inch in one direction. Urza barely even looked at it and just said, But sensei, you haven't seen the design we put on it. She shrugged her shoulders and looked at it, then she had a furious look on her face and said, and detention for the three of you for inappropriate behavior in class, along with this disgusting design on top of your cake. They looked heartbroken, but hey, from what I guess they drew something to do with the human anatomy, thus leading sensei to be pissed and giving them a failing grade for this and a detention to follow. Really. She was going over everyone's desserts and giving them things that ranged from C's to B's. No one had managed an A yet, and it was nerve-wracking. Eventually she landed on our cake and she looked at it with a gleam. I knew she loved strawberry cake because that was one of the first things she told us in class. It looked great and she took a bite out of it and her eyes glittered with excitement. Eventually she said to us, "You both have earned an A for the lesson today, and if you two are willing I would like to take this cake with me and I will give extra credit for remembering I loved strawberry cheesecake." Rebecca giggled at her and nodded her head at this, and I smiled at her. She gave us a smile, then had a stern look after she turned back to the other students. The bell rang and that ended the last class of the day, meaning I now had to go to Kaichu and talk to her about my training for the month and fitting it in with my job schedule. When leaving the class, one saw those three perverted idiots making a dash at me, but Rebecca got between them and me and grabbed my arm and pulled it into her breasts. I was blushing up a storm now, and the three idiots were foaming at the mouth at what I was doing with her. Before they could do anything, she was dragging me away from them and bringing attention to me from all of the students in the hall. Many were forms of jealousy or anger at one of us, but I wasn't sure, to be honest. But the biggest issue was that Rebecca seemed to be unaware that I was uncomfortable with her pressing my arm into her breasts like this. Eventually we reached the student council room, and when we got inside I could see there were two new girls in the room and they stood out more than anyone that I've ever seen. But before I could say anything, Sona was looking at me with fire in her eyes. "Naruto, what exactly are you doing?" I looked to my left and saw that she still had my arm buried in her breasts. I freaked out and extracted it from her and shouted, "It's not what it looks like, Kaichu. That's Sona to you. And what do you mean by that exactly?" I sweated trying to explain the situation to her and everyone in the room. "It's fine, he's right. I buried his arm into my breast so we could get here without problems from Issei and his friends, that's all. Thank whoever I worship Rebecca came up with that explanation." Sona looked at me and I nodded my head agreeing with it, and she huffed at me. Her cheeks were red and she was now pouting at me. "Whatever, Naruto, I want you to meet my sister Seraphol and her queen Madaka. They are here because of a favor I asked of them." Seraphol definitely had a unique outfit with some kind of princess warrior look and a wand to go with it. She had purple eyes like Sona, but unlike hers, Seraphol's were full of joy and mischief. Plus, compared to her sister, she was much shorter than her and didn't wear glasses, along with having a ridiculous size bust. The girl next to her was standing there and she had a weirder look than Seraphol considering where we were standing right now. She was wearing a no-sleeve GI and it was cut down to the point it ended at her belly button, and a pair of knee-length GI pants with tap around her ankle and foot. She had tap on her hands as well, making her look intimidating. She had long blue hair that was messy but at times straight. She had brown eyes that showed fun and joy in them, but a strong will to fight. On top of that, she had a large bust going for her and a slim figure with a nice size ass as well. Does being a devil give you incredible and sexy beauty, or is it something in the food they eat? Well, Sona doesn't have the large breasts like everyone, but she still was very sexy in her own right. Seraphol ran up to me and started looking me over. She was circling me with a studying look and she was interested in me. Behind me she gave my ass a squeeze, causing me to jump away from her and blush, but she was smiling at me and said, "I like you. Sona does have good taste in men after all." Before she could continue, Sona was right on top of her and started covering her mouth to keep her from continuing what she was going to say about her. Can someone explain to me why this is going on and what the hell is the reason behind it?" Sona finally got off her sister after a big struggle and replied, "We have wait for Rias to show up because there is something we need to discuss with her about the match." I looked at her with confusion, but before anything could be said, Rias walked into the room with Issei at her side. He was looking at the girls with lustful looks and was having a large nosebleed seeing Madaka standing there. She looked at him for a second and then turned away, showing no interest in him whatsoever. Rebecca stood in between Sona and Rias and said with authority in her voice, "Listen, there has been some confusion with the match that is coming up in a month, so let me clarify this. There will be no territory trade whatsoever in this case. Neither of you have the right to do this." "But what will be the prize then?" Rias was barely holding in her anger at Rebecca from what I could tell, and when looking at the two of them, Rebecca won hands down. She was more intimidating to face based on her magical core I could sense, and the fact that she was more confident than her when it came to this meeting. She was surely the better of the two and she had control and poise I've only seen in Sona. It was weird. Well, obviously it's going to be this. The winner of the match gets a date with me then. The whole room was silent for a few minutes. Everyone was stunned silent about this proclamation, but Issei ended up breaking the ice by yelling, "Yes. I agree to this prize. It's worth fighting for." I wasn't as hasty on this because I could feel my king's eyes burning to the back of my skull, telling me to think this through or there would be hell to pay. Weighing my options, this was better to fight for. That way there wasn't something extremely important on the line, plus I knew I would win, so there was nothing to worry about. But this would sure piss off my king, but it was the best thing I could do right now. I also agree to the terms only because this is the easiest thing to fight for. The room was getting heavy with the deathly presence of my king, but I turned to her and answered, "Look, Sona, it's easier to fight for something like a date rather than risking something important to you like your territory. She paused to think about this and eventually consented to my point of view on this, but she wasn't happy about it at all, and the look told me there was going to be hell to pay for it. Very well then, you two will fight for a chance to have a date with me, good luck. She activated a teleportation circle and left the room, and Rias soon followed behind her with an irritated look on her face. Issei saw Rias leave and he quickly left the council room to go look for her. Someone that couldn't even teleport. Man, that's weak, Serafal eventually said. Well, I guess it's time to get on with why I am here then. You see, So-tan asked me to find someone to train with you for the month, and I figured my queen would be perfect for this, considering she has fought some of the strongest in the underworld and is known for training strong sacred gear wielders back in her early days. So she will know how to help you increase your overall strength with the sacred gear and maybe unlock your balance breaker before your fight, so good luck. She gave me a wink and did a pose with her, then teleporting out of the room. Madaka was standing in front of me with a gleam in her eyes and told me, "Meet me after your shift is over and we will get straight to training, okay? I have a method to help speed up your training I think you're going to like." She was soon gone. No teleportation circle, just gone. Finally leaving me with a pissed king and peerage that wanted answers from me. Look, my reasons haven't changed, Sona. Honestly, aren't you glad you're not risking your territory to her? I am, but I wish you didn't rush into this new deal. I sighed and answered. I am sorry, my king. Listen, how about I make it up to you guys? They looked at me with interest and I continued. I have a shift at this restaurant I work at that starts in a little while, so why don't you guys come with me and it'll get you a discount on the food. They all looked at each other and eventually conceded with my point and thus agreed on the meal as long as it's every time they ate there, which I agreed to just to make my king happy again. After getting through some basic paperwork, I was now in the back of the restaurant and changing into my butler outfit along with putting on some fake glasses on my face to add some seduction ability to my outfit. At least that is what the boss woman said would appeal to the customers. I got them situated in the restaurant in the private booth that we reserved for VIPs, but I asked the boss for this favor and she agreed as long as someone isn't already there. The peerage was shocked I worked here, and it's not surprising considering this is one of the top restaurants in the city and it was extremely hard to get a table, let alone a reservation that wasn't 2 months in advance. We served the highest quality food possible only with the best ingredients possible, but biggest thing that made us famous is that it really was a fancy decor and the fact the restaurant had been awarded as one of the top places to eat it in the world. How did I manage to land such a great job? To be honest, I didn't expect to get through the door, but for some reason the manager saw me and immediately asked if I would like to work here, and I said yes. I had some basic training, but eventually I moved past all the other servers and became one of the most asked for waiters. Personally, I made a lot of money on tips, and on top of the paycheck I could probably move out of my apartment, but I liked it there, so I just tell the owner I barely make enough to cover the expenses, that way they don't jack up my rent because of where I work. Now I was walking into the main dining room and saw the fine tables set out for 4 customers to sit at each table at a time. The council was sitting in a booth that had a blue cloth and it had fancy silverware. Most of the girls were trying to hide because they felt out of place in this fancy restaurant by wearing their plain uniforms. Sona was still trying to come to terms with me working here, if the look in her eyes is anything to go on. The funniest reaction I think is Saji, who is trying to keep his jaw from hitting the floor from the prices of some of the meals here. I walked up to them and leaned the glasses down lightly and gave them a charming smile. Most of the girls grew really red in the face and Tsubaki was licking her lips with a clouded look in her eyes. Sona was red in the face that she had steam coming out of her ears. So can I get you anything, my mistresses and master? They were all stuttering messes until finally they managed to order mostly a variety of different meals, mostly stuff that was easy to make but it would be time consuming. Honestly, they were too easy to tease and make uncomfortable in my own work environment. So I headed back to the kitchen to get to work. This was going to be an interesting day. Time skip. After finishing with my work and taking care of my peerage, I headed toward the forest clearing in town that Madaka told me to meet her at. After arriving at the field, I saw her holding some kind of key in her hand that looked like an old-style skeleton key. Once I was standing in front of her, she put the key into the air and turned it, and for some reason I heard a click. Then a door opened, revealing a large empty room where there was different environments to train in and for different situations. She threw me through the portal and I landed on my ass with a thud. Upon entering the room herself, the door disappeared behind her and this left us in an unknown area. Well, Naruto, welcome to my personal training grounds. I am sure you've noticed you can't stand up as easily as you would normally. Well, that is because the gravity in here is 5 times greater than normal. Now I am going to make sure you are ready for your match to the point where you should be able to crush him into dust with no problem. Okay, sensei, but what are we going to work on though? She pointed to my left arm and answered. I am a special individual that can bring out even the strongest sacred gear's full potential, and there is a reason for it. I will push you more than anyone else will and make sure you are barely breathing after each session to make sure you are prepared for all things in life. I nodded my head and she then disappeared and I felt myself leaving my feet and then hitting the ground face first. That is a small taste of my power and that was a love tap compared to most of my punches. I coughed a little and spat up some blood. I was still unsteady and barely able to get to my feet, but I managed to stand up without much trouble. Now though she was in a battle stance of her own and an evil glint was in it. Show me the strength of the Dragon Emperor sleeping inside of your sacred gear. With that began my torture in hell. Sona I was worried about Naruto, honestly I was. Madaka was known for being over the top when she was training someone. Most likely he would come back to me in either broken pieces or he would come back stronger than any of my current pieces. I was drinking tea in the club to try and calm my nerves, but it seemed impossible to do now. The biggest thing for me is that I am worried that Naruto will try to push himself too far, not realizing that the world Madaka took him to was designed for maximizing training in short amounts of time. For every day you spend in there out here it was a week in there, which means that Naruto will have about 28 weeks of training under his belt and he should master his sacred gear during this time. Tsubaki was waving her hand at me and I turned to her and asked. Yes. Sorry Kaichu, but I was wondering if you could tell me about the meeting between yourself and Rias with Lord Lucifer. That everyone wanted to know what went down in the meeting and honestly it was something I won't forget. Alright, but I will not repeat myself, so listen carefully Tsubaki. She nodded her head and the rest of the council was listening in. Flashback begins. I was sitting at my desk with Sirzek sitting in a chair to my left and Grafia was out retrieving Rias from her clubhouse. We were both waiting patiently for her to come, but now this was getting ridiculous. She was now 2 hours late for this meeting and it was just showing us that she was too immature to control her own territory. Finally there was a knock at the door and I answered. Enter. Soon came Rias, who looked annoyed being here, and Grafia, who was equally annoyed with the situation. Sorry for the wait Lord Lucifer. Rias wouldn't leave until she showered. Sirzek waved it off and gave Rias a look that said, sit down and shut up. So she did just that and she did not want to test her brother here and now. Now that you are here Rias, let me explain that I am extremely angry with you right now. She looked confused by that statement, so he continued. Not only have I found out you've been using my name and our family name as means to bully everyone on campus, but to also use it as an excuse for your recent actions, especially concerning a boy named Naruto. With that Rias jumped from her seat and started shouting at him. That shit is the reason you called this meeting. Yes, but that little shit happens to be a devil now serving under Sona, and I suggest you think twice before slandering someone's peerage member. She gritted her teeth and sat back down. Why did you do this Rias? There must be reason other than he asked you to be his friend. I was equally curious to know why she was just bullying the hell out of Naruto the way she is now. That brat spread a rumor on campus that we were dating and then sleeping with each other. He even stated that he was having sex with Akano and Kaneko, so I retaliated in force for this. I rolled my eyes at her. Honestly, that is the reason she started this whole damn fiasco? I heard the rumors too, but I had someone look into who started, and surprise, it was Issei who began the rumors in the first place. Which would lead to Naruto being bullied and treated as a low-class scum. After finding out that he started the rumors, I was going to tell Rias about it, but she started her campaign for making Naruto's life hell on campus and telling me I should stay out of it or else. This was something I couldn't tolerate anymore, considering if he killed himself then the entire school would be held responsible, along with Sirzek having to intervene and find out what happened. Then we both would have been in trouble in this case. Rias, I knew about that nasty little rumor, but Naruto didn't start it. That was Issei. No, it wasn't. I know for a fact that Naruto started that rumor and I only did what was best to punish him. This made me angry, so I questioned her. How is it threatening me the best option? Why couldn't you confront the boy yourself and ask if he started the rumor? I don't have to explain myself to you. Finally Sirzek coughed into his hand, gaining both of our attentions. Regardless Rias, your actions have not gone unnoticed and I am extremely upset with you. Know that I have heard about you leaving that poor boy for dead when you could have healed him instead because of a mistake you made. Why you didn't just bring Issei in and recruit him that way I will never know. But do know this. Everything ends here and you will follow my orders. He started radiating her aura and it scared the hell out of Rias and I. Now beginning today, Sona is in charge of this territory and everything that happens here. Secondly, you are on notice Rias. If I find out this is continuing while I am gone, then you will pulled from the school and return home to the underworld whether you like it or not. Finally, I am sending Rebecca here to make sure you are not breaking any of my rules. Rias jumped out of her chair and started shouting at Sirzek. You can't send that bitch here. The last thing I need is some branch member coming in and making herself look better than me. Sirzek and I had enough, but he was flaring his aura and Rias was now trembling in fear from his fierce look in his eyes. You will not speak of your cousin like that again, and this isn't an option, this is an order. She was red in the face and stomped out of the office, in which led to her confronting Tsubaki and Naruto. Flashback ends. That is pretty much what happened. Everyone in the room was shocked. The reason Naruto was bullied and treated like shit was because of a stupid rumor that was started by Issei. This was insanity from what I could guess from the looks in their eyes. Finally Tsubaki replies. I hope Naruto crushes that stupid little shit in his match with him. Everyone nodded in agreement, and I did as well, considering I was looking forward to showing Rias she picked the wrong person. However, I had to fill out some paperwork that Naruto wouldn't be here until about 2 or 3 days before he returned from training and back to school. I filled it out to where he was gone with a bad illness that has left him bedridden for a while, which would lead to him being gone as long as possible. Honestly, it's a bullshit reason, but there are diseases out there that can be almost crippling, so it wasn't completely unreasonable. I just hope he came back okay. Naruto Pav, 2 days before the match. I was lying on my bed exhausted from the beatings I got from Madoka and had no intention from moving from my bed. Honestly, that girl was as strong like she said she was, and the things she did to me were extremely hard. First few weeks we focused on purely on me getting used to the gravity in this place. It was tough at first, but by week 2 I could walk around normally in this place, but as soon as I mastered that, she gave me something else to do. She put large weights onto my body that weighed a ton on each limb, and I had to learn how to walk like this. This was even more difficult than just gravity alone, and I was barely getting far with the new weights on, so getting knocked around was something understandable. But in a week I managed to get used to the weight and didn't get tired as quickly as I would have. After mastering the gravity and the weights on my body, I started training hand to hand with her, which usually ended with her flattening me with a kick to the face. But I landed some blows of my own on her, but she informed me that she was only going at about 5% of her full strength and speed, showing me I had a long way to go. The biggest thing that changed was that I was able to deal with most of her strikes and blows after 2 weeks of getting my ass flattened. That last bit of the training was used to activate my sacred gear and trying to master it to a fuller extent. I had managed to increase my output faster, and I subconsciously was boosting even when I didn't know it, making the boosts get larger at a time. Right now it only took me a few minutes to actually increase my power to match Madoka at her limit right now. After doing this, I unlocked several abilities tied into this sacred gear, and each one was making me stronger and better than before. Firstly, I could obliterate clothes at will now, thus removing any hidden weapons and armor on someone that they might be hiding. Secondly was the ability called Explosion. This allowed me to release all the stored up energy at once, thus giving me a serious power burst, but only for a short amount of time. Once that was over, I wouldn't be able to move at all. Finally, I managed to use some of the magic in the gauntlet to summon a red orb and fire it as a long-range attack. At first it barely made any indentations on the ground, but now I could actually leave a good-sized crater from the attack. The biggest thing I had going for me now was that Madoka said I was close to the balance breaker. She explained it's where the sacred gear evolves after being pushed to the very limit and grants a new ability to the wielder. But the problem seemed to be I couldn't actually activate the damn thing whatsoever. I tried and tried to push it further and further, but eventually I couldn't manage it no matter how hard I tried. Something was stopping me and I had no idea what. But finally I was finished with training and back at my apartment with only 2 days to relax before my match with Issei. I met with Jack earlier, who was still staying at my place, and she told me she missed me. Flattered by this, I asked if she knew what the other group was doing for Issei, and she frowned. She explained that he activated it and knew one basic attack and was keeping it to himself no matter what. He wanted it to be a surprise, but that was all he was doing. He had no fighting training at all, along with no speed training other than the basic stuff. Honestly, she said, with my training alone, the only way I could lose is if I blew myself up at this point. Well, I had no interest in doing that, so I think I am good. Jack was sleeping on the bed on top of my chest. She insisted that she did, and looking at how cute she looked, I couldn't resist. I know she was probably older than me by a few good years, but just her looks alone told me she still had the mind of a child. So after getting through with some of the issues I had with this, especially when she walked into the room naked, I was able to get to sleep. But the minute I went to sleep, something happened. I was in a space that was filled with fire. Looking around, I eventually landed on some giant red dragon creature staring down at me. He was examining me, and from what I could feel, he had the same feeling as my sacred gear. Really, the divine beast looked at me with a critical stare, and then he roared that shook the entire mindscape. I didn't falter. I stood my ground against him and stared him down. Don't be fooled, I was scared shitless at this point just seeing this dragon, but I was not going to be bullied into submission by it. After it was done roaring, it looked at me and then laughed. You're definitely a brave one. So young one, I see you have been getting used to using my sacred gear lately. I nodded my head at him. Well then, to be honest, out of all previous wielders, you are definitely the strongest one. I mean, really, you've mastered it in a month. That is an amazing feat. Thank you, but to be honest, I kind of cheated by using a room where 1 day equals a week in a sense. So it actually took me 2 to 3 months to master this, since I focus on other things before I started training with this. True, but to be honest, it took my last wielders years before they could even come close to mastering what you have. On top of that, I had to flood their body with dragon energy in order for them to use the balance breaker. The mention of that brought up something that I wanted to ask him for the longest time. Speaking of that, can you tell me what I have to do to unlock that, because I want to learn how to use it as soon as possible. He looked at me with a critical eye and actually leaned his head down to where his eye was right in front of me. If I was to tell you how to unlock it, what would you do with it? I would do everything in my power with it to make Sona proud of my accomplishments. Why do you care so much for the female's opinion? I mean, don't you have your own goals you wish to strive for? I do, but the thing is that I can't do them because the only thing I want to do is make her proud of me. Sona was one of the first people I met on campus that was kind to me when she didn't have to be. She never believed the nasty rumors made about me, and she was willing to give me a chance after I died. So as far as I am concerned, Sona is the most important thing in my life right now, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure she stays happy. The dragon looked at me for a few minutes. He was just staring at me. He finally stood up and grunted at me, and then I saw something gathering around him. Your path is one of great selflessness and one that very few people walk and even fewer stay on. You do this, you can't act selfishly. Your life is tied with hers from now on. Do you understand what you are signing yourself off to? I do know, and I will accept it without hesitation. He sighed, and like that I felt something flowing through my body. The feeling was overwhelming, and before I knew it I felt great pain running through me as well. The pain was excruciating, but I was trying to bear through it, but I let out a scream shortly afterwards. Finally the pain disappeared and I collapsed to the ground, sweating like crazy from the excruciating pain that I was put through. I activated my sacred gear and noticed that it felt easier to control, and it just felt more natural on my arm now. Looking at the dragon, he looked at me with a small smirk on his mouth and he said, I have flooded your body with dragon energy. Be warned, you will need something to drain it every so often, or it will most likely kill you at some point. But don't worry, those females you are so attached to would be willing to suck the energy out of your body if you ask. I now was blushing from the implications, and he was laughing at me now. Through your gauntlet hand, you idiot, that's where it is mostly stored up at. Okay, but what about the balance breaker? Can I use it now? He nodded his head and I started cheering for myself. Now I only have to practice with it a few times and then it's showtime against Issei. As I was fading out, I could hear something in the background, and it was like Diedrich was arguing with someone that was there. When will you reveal yourself, old fool? When the time is right, my dear friend, only when he is ready for his new responsibilities. I didn't know who that was, but it sounded like Diedrich knew this man and had some form of respect for him if his tone of voice was anything to go by. But that isn't important considering I now had a new form to test out and hopefully master by the time the fight comes around. 2 days later, standing in an open area, I saw Sona and the peerage along with Rias and her peerage standing on the left side of the open field. Rebecca was standing next to both groups and she was wearing a very tight top that Issei was going nuts for. Finally I saw Madoka and Grafia standing by both their respective groups, and they each were giving slight glares at each other every so often. I was standing in the middle of the field facing down Issei, who had a nosebleed along with trying to look intimidating against me. The big thing was that both Grafia and Madoka were recording this fight to show both respective families what happened here. Soon Rebecca walked onto the field between us and announced, the match between Issei and Naruto will now begin. The rules are simple. The only way for the match to end is if someone surrenders or they are knocked out. Killing is prohibited, otherwise the offending party shall be punished along with the rest of the peerage. Is that clear to everyone here? I nodded my head and kept up a blank look on my face while thinking about what Issei would try to do in this fight. Most likely he would try bull rushing me, and if that didn't work he would use his sacred gear and try to beat me with it then. Issei agreed to the terms, but I could tell he was more interested in watching her breasts bounce around in her tight top. Finally she stepped back and summoned a barrier around both of us in the field and shouted, begin. With that I waited for Issei to make the first move, and I didn't have to wait long. Issei charged at me with his left fist raised and threw a punch. I ducked under the punch and threw my own right hook into his jaw, sending him flying across the field. He quickly got back to his feet and tried again, but this time he tried throwing multiple punches at me. I was ducking under them or just bobbing my head side to side or backwards to avoid the strikes. Finally, growing bored with his weak-ass performance, I grabbed the back of his neck and threw a knee into his stomach. The wind was knocked out of him, and then I followed it up with a right hook across the face. After doing that I grabbed him by the leg and swung him over my head and slammed him on the ground with his back hitting the ground. After making sure I did this, I summoned my wings and flew into the air as high as I can. Now came the next test against Issei. How good of a flyer is he, and can he fight well in the sky? Issei got himself out of the ground already bleeding badly from the mouth and flew up at me. But he was a slow flyer, and before he knew it I was in front of him and sending him crashing to the ground with authority again. In doing so I flew back into the sky and crossed my arms waiting for him to get back up. Deciding to goad him to revealing his ace, I said, You might as well give up Issei while you were busy leering at your king and girls with big breasts. I was busy training. This is something I have been working towards for weeks now and I know you can't beat me. Now was hoping he took the bait and uses his sacred gear. It worked. I saw a gold light and his gold gauntlet came out on his right hand again. Everyone in the crowd was waiting to see what his sacred gear can do and if it was actually worth 8 pawn pieces. He gathered as much magic as he could from his small reserves and fired a giant fireball at me. This was it. All he could do was use some form of fire magic with his sacred gear? Beware partner, while it isn't the most powerful sacred gear it's still dangerous. It was made from one of the most powerful phoenixes to ever exist. While the wielder has incredible power, unless he can earn his favor he will never unlock his balance breaker, and given how rude and perverted this boy is there is no way he ever will have it. That firebird has too much pride to love for others that he would sink so low to actually help a stupid pervert. So in other words, I am okay to wipe this guy out now? Yep. That was the only thing that I need to hear to get this show on the way and finish him, but I could hear shouting on the sidelines and wondered what that was about. Third person. Sidelines, I can't fucking believe it. His sacred gear is fire. It's useless to me in my situation. Rias was pissed. All that time and effort into getting Issei into her peerage wasted because of his sacred gear. While powerful in its own right and useful in some cases, this would be useless against Riser. He was already named after the Firebirds, which would be a clear indication that anything fire-based would be useless against him. Now she needed some other plan in order to avoid getting married, but what? Naruto is even more useless than Issei is, even with all of his specialized training that he got. That's what she believes and denies that Naruto is definitely stronger than most pure-blooded devils at her age, except maybe Saraug might be the only one to match him and beat him now. Sona, however, was laughing at the irony of the whole situation. I mean, the one person she was banking on saving her might be more help for Riser than an enemy, to be honest. However, she was worried Naruto was dodging the fireball and he was just floating there looking into space for some reason. Finally, the fireball hit Naruto and she grew extremely worried that he was about to die. Rias was cheering for Issei, forgetting her problems for later because he was about to defeat Naruto, making up for this. The other members of her peerage were cheering as well for different reasons. Akeno was happy that Naruto was about to lose, that way he would remember his place and that is beneath her. Kiba because this would show Tsubaki that he was the right guy for her, not him. Kaneko because he made her king angry and made those rumors about them dating. Issei was ecstatic and knew for a fact he had the match won, so he decided to put one more nail in his coffin to further break him. Well, that's it for this stupid match. Don't worry, I'll take good care of Sona. After all, she needs a real man and not some brat that's parents probably abandoned him because even they didn't want any association with him. Sona was disgusted with this display along with the rest of the peerage. Saji was especially angry at the boy. Yeah, he was jealous of Naruto, but he would never sink to the same lows as this guy. Honestly, he and Naruto were pretty cool with each other, and while he knew of his perverted tendencies he explained that it's okay because every guy is like that no matter how much they try to deny it. Madaka was furious with the boy. This was the great pawn that everyone was talking about and how he took 8 pawn pieces. Honestly, she would kill the boy after this match if he killed Naruto. He took more beatings from her that were worse than this, but the fact he sunk this low and mentioned his parents like this infuriated her. Grafia was going to have another talk with Sirzek and have a proper punishment lined up for him if he stepped out of line again. Rebecca thought was the most upset with this situation. She thought it was some kind jealousy thing, but now it just showed that they were horrible people in general. Now she wanted to make sure Issei lost this match because when she met Naruto she felt he was genuinely kind to her, not because of her family reputation but more of that he wanted to get to know the real her, not the star of the Gremory family. If Issei won though, she would be sure to neuter him on the date and make sure her cousin knows that he tried something to have him executed. Hey, she was ruthless when she wanted to be, she was still a devil in all rights. Suddenly there was bright green light inside of the fireball that scared the shit out of everyone and suddenly the ball disappeared. Floating there now was red dragon armor with a green stone in the center of his chest along with green eye visors. He looked intimidating and then Rias realized what sacred gear that was. The boosted gear. How the hell does he have that? She looked over at Sona and she shot her a smug look that said, you were wrong and I was right. Now Rias knew Issei was in trouble now. Naruto. First person, I was furious with Issei. Insult me, that's fine. Mention my family, fine, I'll bust your teeth in. But fuck with my friends and the council, and that is where I draw the fucking line. So I gathered up as much dragon energy as possible and activated my balance breaker. It took me a day to figure out the limitations on this armor and ability that I could now use it better than I did the other day. I was far from mastering it, but it was good enough for this match. I gathered red magic in my hand and a ball of red energy and said, this is where this fight ends. Good night, Issei, and next time you fuck with Sona get ready to die then. With that I fired my dragon blast shot and it crashed into him causing a massive explosion. When the dust cleared it showed a small crater with Issei in there unconscious, but one of his arms came off from the attack. Oh well, he's still alive and it can reattach with magic, so no problem for me. I floated down and deactivated my armor and looked at everyone. Rebecca announced, "The match is over and Naruto of the Sea Tree Peerage is the winner." Sona and the others ran over to me congratulating me on my victory. The girls gave me kisses on the cheek and Saji gave me a guy hug. I looked over at Rias and saw she was fuming angry, but really I couldn't care less for her because she deserved it in my opinion. Now who was useless to who now? Rebecca was walking up to me and she got right in front of me, and before anyone could do anything she gave me a kiss on the lips. After standing there in shock for a few seconds she separated from me and said, "I'll see you this Sunday at 3 o'clock, okay?" I just nodded my head and watched her leave with a sway in her hips. But I was brought back to reality when I saw the girls along with Madaka was staring at me with smiles but with evil auras around them. Most of the girls left me there, but only Tsubaki and Sona and Madaka remained after Saji ran for the hills. Rias and her group were gone trying to work on getting Issei's arm reattached, with Grafia watching on with a smile on her face. "Naruto, you are handing out flyers tomorrow, got that?" Sona told me in a sicking sweet tone. I just quickly nodded my head, not wanting to piss her off, but I honestly didn't know what I did wrong here. "Naruto, your real training begins tomorrow, so get plenty of rest, got that?" I paled now. What the hell did I do? "Oh Naruto, you saw me naked, it's only right you take responsibility by letting me stay at your place from now on, right?" Okay, that was weird, and the other two girls were angry at her now, but all I could do was nod. The three of them were gone and all I could do was ask, "What the hell did I do?" Outside of apartment, I really wish someone would explain girls to me because I can't seem to figure them out lately. Oh well, hell starts tomorrow, so might as well get some sleep now. But I noticed the door to my place was unlocked, immediately putting me on edge. Entering the room slowly, I was looking around until I saw someone standing there in the kitchen. She was wearing our school uniform and she had long purple hair from what I could see. Slowly entering the room, I saw her turn around to look at me, and now I could tell who it was. She made me pale in fear because I was well acquainted with her in the sense I had to run for life at times while around school when kids trying to pick a fight with me weren't chasing me. Looking at me, I could see her blue eyes locking on me and her having a small smile on her face, and when compared to some of the girls I know she wasn't really busty, but she had good sized chest. "Shoko, when the hell did you get back in town? More importantly, why did you break into my apartment?" Yes. Shoko is one of the resident members of the council, but the issue is that she is busy doing jobs all over the place that she was never here. But when she was after meeting her in the council room, she has made it her goal to be with me no matter what. It was cute at first, but now it was crazy considering she was always following me anywhere. If I had some interaction with another girl, she made my life hell about it. The biggest thing about the situation was that she was the scariest person in the world when it came to her being around me, considering she has a grip like a rook. Plus she blinded me a few times with 2 fingers digging into my eyes at times. As your future fiancé, it's my job to make sure you're eating well. Plus I just got done with some of my clients and I am back in town for a while now. I also heard of you joining us along with your fight with Issei, so I came to watch. But I didn't see you or Jack out there." Her eye twitched at the mention of Jack, and before I knew it a knife was zooming past my head and ended up impaled in the wall next to me. She missed me by a few inches and it scared the hell out of me. Why is she in this conversation? Does she live here now or something? Before I could answer, Jack came through my side window wearing her usual gear and landed on my floor. "Hello Naruto, I am finished with my last job, how's everything going?" "Sorry I missed the match, but I heard it was a slaughter." Jack looked and saw Shoko and the room went dead silent. This was awkward, and I honestly have to say this was the worst feeling in the world. I say one wrong thing and this could break out into a fight immediately. Looking over at Shoko, I saw that was now standing next to me looking at me with a mean glare in her eyes. Naruto, what is she doing here? Her black aura was flowing around her like crazy and it was scary. Jack then jumped in between us and had her own glare at her. Don't threaten Naruto. Soon the tension in the room became palpable and I just hoped nothing else would go wrong now. A teleportation circle activated and in came Tsubaki, and she was looking at me with a smile on her face. Naruto-kun, there you are, I was looking for you a little while, so how about we finish what we started a month ago, huh? Then she noticed Shoko and Jack in the room as well, and things became even more tense than before. Shit. Naruto couldn't believe the issue he was facing right now. I mean, Shoko showing up in his house was surprising as it was, but the fact that Tsubaki and Jack also showed up while she was here was bad. Shoko has a mean streak a mile long when it comes to being an easily jealous individual. On top of that, she knew everything about Naruto to the point she could tell you where he was at any given point during a day, even if he did something unusual from his usual routine. Shoko was angry. This was supposed to be her time with her Naruto-kun, but now these other bitches showed and now she had to wait for them to leave. She remembered hearing from some members of the peerage that Naruto was the center of attraction among them in the student council. While she had come to terms that Sona would be the first one to get her hands on him, she didn't like the other girls trying to. In her mind, only she and Sona deserved to be with Naruto and the other girls could stay the hell out of the way. Naruto was trying to come up with the best solution in how to defuse the situation right now. Considering the three girls look ready to kill each other or worse, him. So Shoko, you're a devil as well. Great thinking on his behalf because now Shoko had her attention on him and nodded her head with a blush on her face. Yes, I've been one since my first year in high school. I come from a long line of weapon masters and strategists, so I was the great choice as a second in command if anything happened with Sona senpai or Tsubaki senpai. Tsubaki looked miffed. She assumed she was hot shit when really Sona brought her in because she was a skilled warrior and could use any weapon she got her hands on. Plus, her ability to create armor with her magic also helped too, I guess. Other than that, she was not much on the battlefield or in a ratings game, to be honest. Also, she made it no secret she wanted Naruto all for herself. However, she bowed down to the fact that Naruto would most likely be with Sona, as she called him first, so she settled for being the second wife, but Tsubaki was going to make it clear she would be in that position. Plus Naruto already seen her naked, so she was closer to him than the other girls. Jack finally grew bored of the conversation and took initiation of the situation by getting out of her chair and sat on Naruto's lap. Tsubaki looked enraged and Shoko's eyes started glowing with an evil red color in them. Naruto, the poor bastard, realized he was in serious trouble and he needed to do something to defuse the situation right now before it got out of control, so doing what he does best, he made a bullshit excuse with a yawn first. Well, it's getting late, so you girls should probably head home while I make sure that Jack gets to bed. Picking her up like a princess, he carried Jack out of the room, but Shoko and Tsubaki soon followed him. Naruto quickly put Jack on his bed and retreated into his bathroom to brush his teeth and change into his sleepwear, which was a black shirt and his boxers. Arriving back in his bedroom, he saw Jack was lying under the covers, but so were Tsubaki and Shoko. However, he noticed their clothes were scattered on the floor, showing they were naked under the sheets. Well, you girls get some good sleep and I will take the sleeping bag, okay? Before he could even move, he was bound to the bed with the three girls each pinning him there. Tsubaki on his left, Shoko on his right, and Jack on top of him sleeping on his chest. They were lying on top of him, preventing him from getting off the bed. Good night, Naruto-kun, they all said and started cuddling into him. Naruto finally gave up on getting away from the girls and went to sleep while trying to hide his excitement of having three naked girls rubbing up against him. Yeah, this was going to be a difficult sleep for him. Next day, school this morning had been hell for Naruto because the minute he woke up the girls seemed to wake up at the same time. Shoko wanted a good morning kiss, but Tsubaki said she wanted it first. Jack tried to get it, but the two girls pulled her off, and this led to the three girls having a standoff against each other. They were all naked, which led to Naruto blushing and covering his face trying to hide his arousal. Naruto quickly went to the bathroom and started up the shower only after activating a magical lock on the door preventing the girls from coming in with him. Naruto finished his shower quickly and dashed downstairs to make breakfast while the girls were busy changing and getting ready for the day. After a few minutes they came down the stairs and were dressed in their uniforms, but Naruto could see there was still anger in their eyes for each other. Naruto immediately made some breakfast and sat their plates down, hoping to avoid them all fighting each other right now. This would lead to Naruto watching them trying to feed him, which sparked more jealousy between the girls and then the breaking of his table. Luckily he fixed it with magic, but it was a pain in the ass, to be honest. Arriving at the school, he was the view of several odd looks considering he had Shoko dragging him by his left arm while Tsubaki was dragging him by his right arm. Jack was enjoying the ride while being on his back, and Naruto looked like he was in immense pain right now. Two girls were pulling his arms out of the socket and he could barely heal his arms in time before they were pulled out of the socket again, leading to him restarting the whole process again. Naruto finally got to his class and away from the three girls and had his head resting on his desk right now. Surprisingly, Irena was early today and she looked like she was waiting for Naruto right now. After taking his seat, she came up to him and sat on his desk looking him into his eyes. She asked, "Naruto, how are things for you now?" "They are good. The bullying has pretty much stopped, so I am good." She nodded her head and then looked away from him. "You know, there are things lately that have been happening and I don't know why yet, but for some reason, you're at the center of it all." Naruto started sweating a little bit but had a poker face on right now, hoping she wouldn't sense his nervousness. "Well, I guess I just have some bad timing, that's all." She narrowed her eyes at him, but they returned to normal with a huff. "Yeah, maybe, but I feel there is more to this than you're letting on." She got off his desk and all of the students started flooding the room ready for their lesson. Naruto was wondering what the hell that was about. I mean, could she know more about what's going on lately than she is letting on? No, He couldn't feel anything coming from her, no magic at all, so how could she be part of all of this? Ah. Naruto figured he might be overthinking this again and just focused on the lesson right now. What he didn't know was Irena was watching him with an intense look on his face. She had a gleam in her eye and thought. It's emerging. Soon the being of darkness will return and he will retake his rightful place as ruler and I will emerge once more. Orc. Rias was furious right now. All that effort to recruit Issei and it turns out that his sacred gear is useless to her now. His fire gear would be useful against anyone but Riser and he would laugh at his pathetic attempt at attacking him now. This pissed her off more because the boy she hated actually had a sacred gear that would be useful in dealing with Riser now, but it was in the hands of someone she despised. The honest reason for her hatred for him was that she was sick of people coming up to her asking to be her friend all the time. Plus he looked a lot like Riser, so she was convinced that he would be like him too by his looks alone. Which this is pretty poor reasoning, but why would she care for anyone else's opinion? Honestly, she was only looking out for her own interests now. However, she was worried. She needed Naruto in order to deal with Riser in the upcoming battle, but the problem was that the only one that could help her was in Sona's peerage now. Plus, she didn't exactly go out of her way to be his friend in this situation either. With her peerage and herself pretty much treating him like shit, he would more likely leave her to rot than ever help her. She was looking over her peerage and saw that Akeno was handing out tea to everyone while the others were doing their own thing. Kiba was leaning against the wall with anger in his eyes, wanting to deal with Naruto now. But with his sacred gear and his training he did for the last month, he was more than a match for him and could probably kill him if he tried anything. Kaneko was eating her sweets and was annoyed that the pervert lost to Naruto of all people. Akeno was upset with Issei as well. I mean, she thought he would be able to beat Naruto, but it turns out that his perverse nature overshadowed his will to learn and to fight. Now Sona had a win over them and Rebecca was going on a date with Naruto later on in the week. Honestly, she couldn't care about the date to be honest, but it would have been funny for her if she went on that date with Issei instead of Naruto. Rias finally got her peerage's attention and said. You all know from yesterday's match that we now have a serious problem. It turns out that Issei's sacred gear is useless against Riser and his peerage, so we need to do something before he shows up to challenge us to a ratings game. Now the only one I know could beat him now along with his peerage would be Naruto. Everyone in the room either had a frown or in Kiba's case, a scowl. Now I know you guys don't like it, but we need him, so we need to brainstorm ways in getting him to join us in the battle against Riser. Well, I could always try seducing him. I am sure I could get him to do what I want if I promise him a sight at my breasts. Akeno made it clear she could seduce him with ease, but Rias wasn't sure if she could. Naruto seemed to have his eyes glued on Sona and her peerage members, so this might not work. Akeno, while the idea has merit, the fact is we might need something more if we plan to get his assistance in this manner. Akeno frowned at this, figuring she would go for the idea considering she has been the center of many lustful dreams from the other students. So obviously Naruto would fall for this immediately, but Rias didn't think that would be the case. However, she was going to give it a shot regardless if she thinks it won't work, because she was confident she would attract him immediately. Kiba was growling about having him around considering he has the attention of the one girl in school he really wants, Tsubaki. She had been the center of his obsession for weeks now, but when Naruto came into the picture she suddenly became attracted to him. Now Naruto was joining her peerage, which meant she would spend even more time with him, leaving him out of the equation. We know that Naruto is working somewhere in town this week, so all we need to do is find his work and spread it around school he works there. Afterwards, Naruto will be forced to hear my demands if he wants me to remove the memory of the restaurant from their memories. Rias' plan sounded idiotic in the minds of her peerage members because Sona could easily erase their memories and then confront Rebecca about this. Bucko, as much as your idea holds merit, the fact is Sona could counter this with ease. Rias pouted at this being pointed out and started brainstorming again. Kaneko didn't add any ideas because she was unsure how to. While she wanted to help her king, the issue was that she was against having that man in their peerage even if it would be temporary. Then it hit her like a ton of bricks. Bucko. Everyone's attention was now Kaneko. I think the best way to get him in our peerage is for you to call a trade with her for him. Everyone there was shocked by the simplicity of the idea. Sona could trade Naruto to them, but now the question is who would they give her as a means to cope with the trade. Issei would be a good trade, but the issue is that Sona has made it clear she despises him and the rest of the peerage does as well, so that was a no. Everyone else was of use to Rias in the match, so that's a no as well. Then they remembered Gasper and how he is sealed in his room without a means to get out and do stuff. He would be happy to be traded to someone that wouldn't bother him, and plus this would mean that Rias keeps everyone else intact for the match. With this as in mind, Rias would confront Sona tomorrow about this deal only because today was Saturday and it was made clear to her to not bother her on Saturdays for some reason. Student council Sona was looking at her peerage and seeing that everyone was in high spirits right now, and that made her happy. After yesterday's match she figured they would be, considering Naruto pretty much ran through Issei without any real trouble, plus she showed that her investment was worth it in the end. Why her sister gave her the dud piece, she would never know, and plus there were many more questions that were still needed to be answered, like, what was the full capacity of the single piece and what powers lied inside of it? She informed her sister that she used the piece on Naruto and this surprised her and she asked was she sure that was the piece she used. Sona confirmed it and this put Seraphal in high spirits and told her not to tell anyone else about this because this was something extremely important. With Seraphal's secrecy on this now, Sona wanted to know what this was all about. The council doors were blown open and in ran Tsubaki, who had a panicked look on her face, along with Shoko looking furious and worried. Kaichu, you need to hurry. Sona now was alarmed. What the hell happened to put Tsubaki in such a panicked state? Naruto and Rebecca. 15 minutes earlier Naruto and Rebecca were walking away from the cooking class with Urza with another stellar performance of making Urza some pasta this time around. Upon leaving the class, they were heading towards the student council room to talk to Sona about some peerage-related stuff, and Rebecca needed a second opinion on fun places to take Naruto on their date. However, before they could get down the hall, they were confronted by the other two idiots of the perverted trio who were angry right now. They just couldn't understand how Naruto, the loser of the school, got the attention of a beautiful girl like Rebecca, and it was pissing them off right now, so they decided to attack Naruto the only way they could, and that was with some stuff they heard around town. Not just rumors, these were the rumors of how he lost everyone in the orphanage years ago. I wonder how Rebecca would feel about you if she heard about the incident with the orphanage. Naruto froze at the mention of that place, signaling the perverted duo to continue with their explanation. I mean, what was it like to slaughter every one of those kids with nothing more than a knife in your hand? To kill the sweet little nun that was staying there as well? I mean, only a real monster would do something like this and kill all of those people at the age of 10. Naruto had tears running down his eyes and ran away from both of them with their mocking laughter heard down the hallway. Rebecca was trying to stop him from leaving, but he was already gone and in tears no less. This was enough. She could stand for some mild bullying, but to outright and attack someone with a rumor like this was uncalled for, and she would guarantee these boys would be expelled for this. Rebecca walked up to the boys and was about to say something until she noticed a group of girls coming down the hallway. She saw that it was members of the kendo club that attacked the duo back when they had Issei, but now they received the beatings instead of letting Issei taking it for them. This group also responsible for a beating he took when he was human, and after they heard that Issei started that rumor they apologized to him for what they did. The girls swore they would hurt anyone that tried to hurt Naruto in any shape way. Eventually the girls circled around the two boys and had their kendo sticks out ready to clobber these idiots for what they said. Rebecca however coughed into her hand, signaling everyone to stop and listen. The two perverts thought she was going to reward them for what they said and done, because no one had managed to bring Naruto to tears like that before or make him back off. However, their reality was nothing like they were hoping it would be. You two will be coming with me to the headmistress's office and you will be explaining this to them after we are done. Recently the headmaster stepped down from his position and gave it to the new one who was now the headmistresses of this academy. It so happened that this woman was Rebecca's mother, and she was not one for messing around with mindless bullying. She also had a mean streak against perverts as well, so this was a double threat for these two boys, along with the fact Rebecca wasn't happy with them either. When the daughter isn't happy, then the mother won't be happy either. Having the kendo club dragging the boys down the hall and into the main office, Rebecca knocked on the door and heard a muffled, "Come in." She walked into the office with the girls and she saw her mother sitting there with two other teachers that she recognized. It was Irina, assassination classroom, not the childhood friend of Issei, and Urza, who were wondering what was going on now with these two boys. But the woman behind the desk who had short red hair and green eyes was wondering what is going on. Rebecca came up to her mother and whispered into her ear everything that has happened with Naruto, and she was now looking at the boys with rage in her eyes. Looking at Irene and Urza, she asked, "Tell me, you've both known these two boys longer than I have. What can you tell me about them?" Both boys were hoping for something good, but they were shot down when they said, "They focus more on their porn than my work, and they are busy in class imagining disgusting harems and sex scenes with each other." Irina wrinkled her nose and turned away with annoyance. "They have shown disrespect for Naruto in my class and the other female students. They also have made it clear that they only have breasts on the mind and nothing more." This annoyed Urza, but she just settled with a scowl on her face and piercing eyes to show she was serious. "Well boys, it seems that you've been causing quite the problem on campus. I am sorry to say, not really. I am not the headmaster and I am not going to give you another chance. As of this moment, you both can pack your stuff and burn your uniforms because you were expelled." Both boys looked shocked and were arguing with her about this, saying it was completely unfair to them. The kendo club looked relieved they wouldn't have to fix the peeping hole all the time now. Also, this was justice for all the girls on campus for when they perved on them or their club. Rebecca wasn't interested in this and she went out to find Naruto and try to comfort him from his emotional breakdown. Now, in the forest around the school, Sona had finally managed to locate Naruto after scouring the school for him and saw him crying while leaning against a tree. She slowly approached him and called out, "Naruto, are you okay?" He looked up at her and she saw a sight that just broke her heart in an instant. He had tears running down his face like a river and he was sniffling every few minutes. She couldn't feel any worse for him right now, but she did, and she did the only thing she could. She walked up to him and then she wrapped him in a hug and started squeezing him, letting him know it was okay to cry right now. He was crying his eyes out and trying to come to terms with what those boys said to him. After crying for a little while, he looked up at Sona to show his tear-stained face and the heartbroken look in his eyes. "Those idiots, they have no idea what's it's like." Sona looked at him with confusion, but he soon told her what those two boys said to him. She was furious now. If the headmistress doesn't expel them, she will make sure their lives on campus were a living hell from now on. Naruto looked at her with a broken look and said, "The truth about that incident is that I watched the massacre and never saw the man that killed everyone in the orphanage. We were playing hide and seek and I was hiding in a secret hole in the wall that I only knew about. But we soon heard the head nun at the time scream in a cackling laughter, and before we knew it someone came into the room with us. He started slaughtering us and I watched through the hole as he was beheading everyone and laughing at their dying bodies. The worst part was that I was scared to the point I couldn't do anything for them. Once I was sure he was gone, I left the room and saw the slaughtered bodies of everyone in the building. No one was spared. The 5-year-olds to the 13-year-olds, everyone was dead, and I hid like a coward. When I saw the nun and how she was raped and murdered right there in the church room, I broke down there and the cops found me there. They knew I didn't kill her with the DNA evidence from the nun, but some people believe that I somehow did it regardless what the evidence says." Sona looked at Naruto with sadness in her eyes and gives him another quick hug. Then she looked at him straight in the eyes and said, "Naruto, no matter what anyone says, you weren't a coward. You were 10. What could you have done against a full-grown exorcist that had gone crazy with lust and power?" He nodded his head, but before he could speak she cut him off by continuing, "Naruto, if you didn't hide, then I would have never met you and then we would have never became friends. I am grateful for that. I understand you're heartbroken about them, but they would want you to live on for them and make more." She couldn't continue when Naruto hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Sona-chan." She felt her cheeks heat up from him calling him that. Finally he was not being respectful to him and now he was trying to be more affectionate to her. She rubbed his back and said, "Naruto, no matter what, I will always be here for you." He nodded his head and gave her a bright smile, causing her blush to get darker. Naruto finally said, "Thanks for that, Sona-chan. I promise I will be there for when you need me too." Sona smiled at him and they stood up and walked back to the school building, their friendship growing even more than what it was before and now slowly blossoming into true love. End of the day. Naruto decided to head home today after an exhausting day of being cornered by Sona and the rest of the peerage about what happened. Word spread on campus that both boys that said those things to him were expelled and forbidden from ever stepping foot on campus again. Obviously, Issei was angry with this and tried to confront Naruto about this, but he was quickly sent away after Rebecca tore into him too. Getting close to home, Naruto was just about to say fuck it and teleport there, but he suddenly felt something behind him. He jumped out of the way of it and saw that it was something that surprised him. There, standing was the woman who put a holy spear through his gut about a month ago. He was ready to summon his sacred gear, but she held her hands up in a form of surrender. "I am not here to fight. Just talk." "Well then talk before I show you why you should have killed me already," she sighed and answered. "Look. What happened a month ago, that wasn't supposed to happen, okay? I was trying to deal with the perverted brat, and seeing you there in the forest I knew I couldn't leave witnesses. Plus I had seen you on campus and the way you were treated by everyone and I felt bad for you. So look, what I am trying to say is that I am sorry, and to show you, I have someone I want you to take care of for me." Moving her wings, she showed me a blonde teenage girl with a nun's cape on her head and she had bright blue eyes. She was looking at me with confusion and fear. "Her name is Asia Argento and she is in need of protection. My group was planning on extracting her sacred gear from her without me finding out about it, but I discovered it a few weeks ago, so I decided to head off their plan before it began. I need you to take the girl to your king and try to protect her while I wait for Azazel to show up and deal with the traitors." I looked at her hesitance, but I nodded my head and the girl ran over to me and bowed her head. "Thank you for helping me." I nodded my head and sighed. Sona-chan was going to be pissed about this, but first I needed to take her somewhere she can stay safely. There is only one person that would do this for me and I really hate to ask a favor from her, but I am desperate at this point. "Come with me, Asia, we're going to go see my boss first." Butler Cafe. Naruto was bending over in a bowing position in front of his boss right now. Asia was standing next to her with a nervous look on her face, showing she wasn't as confident in the situation as he was now. The person they were bowing to was a silver-haired woman with a beautiful skin complexion, large breasts, a firm yet slim body, and finally she had waist-length purple hair and brown eyes to go with her looks. This was Mia, and she is what Naruto would call the mother hen of the business, and she is also his boss. She has owned and operated this place with the greatest efficiency and has high remarks from many who have come to dine at her restaurant. She even has many male fans that want her to become their wife, but she turned them all down at different points. Also, she was the scariest person in the place, with people that wanted to argue with her because she summoned some kind of demonic mask behind her, scaring everyone into submission. Mostly the male patrons that are bothering the women in the restaurant are trying to cause trouble, but she isn't a weakling by any means. She is fierce with a kendo stick and can knock out anyone that crosses her with a single swing. Right now, he was prostrating himself to Mia in the hopes she would allow Asia to work here and maybe give her a place to stay. This was slim because even though he was her favorite employee, he knew that her attraction to his work ethic only extends so far. Please boss. All I am asking for is her to have a job here at the shop. She was looking at Naruto with a blank look on her face and then looked over at the girl. Asia was nervous and couldn't look any more like a poor puppy you would feel bad for kicking. Mia looked at Naruto and finally she sighed. Fine, she can work here and take the apartment on the top floor, but she has to clean and help me open in the morning, and she has to attend a school of my choice. Asia looked radiant about this, and Naruto looked relieved that he convinced his boss to do this. Of course, whatever you say, boss. She nodded her head and then turned to Asia. Well, come on dear, we need to get you ready for when you start your shift tomorrow. Yes, Mia-sama. I will work really hard. Thank you Naruto-san for helping me with this as well. Naruto waved off her thanks and she followed her downstairs to get started on her training. Naruto was happy he at least got her place for her to lay low, but now he was facing a critical issue: how to tell Sona in a way where she doesn't kill him for doing it, which is extremely hard to come up with in his mind. Finally, he figured he'd just tell her what happened and why it happened, so pulling out his cell phone he dialed her number and waited for her to pick up. Hello Naruto-kun. Hey Sona-chan, do you got a minute? Sure, what is it? Naruto took a deep breath. Well, we might have a sensitive issue on our hands with the fallen in the city right now. Oh, and how so? Naruto could feel the rage on the other side of the phone. It made him shiver, and he prayed to whoever in the underworld you pray to that he would live through this. I might have ran into the fallen that put a spear through my gut and done a favor for her. The line went dead and a teleportation circle came to life in the middle of the room. Sona was now standing in front of him with a stern look on her face. Explain. Well, you see, she brought me this innocent nun that had been abandoned by the church and told me they were going to do something about removing her sacred gear, I think. So I took the girl with me here to see if my boss wouldn't mind shacking her up here for a little while. And you just now told me about this, why? Naruto sighed at her anger. He understood why she was angry with him, considering he did this behind her back recently doesn't help at all. Because I knew I didn't have a lot of time before the fallen come looking for her, and when they do, I want her to be somewhere she would be safe. She nodded her head slightly and then sighed at Naruto. Look, next time you plan to do something like this, let me know. This could have caused major problems with the other factions. He nodded his head and she gave him a hug and disappeared again in the teleportation circle. Naruto soon left the same way, never noticing that Mia was watching the whole thing with a small smile on her face. Just like his father, caring for others but oblivious to why someone is angry with him. Oh well, let's hope things work out soon. Next day, student council. Apparently Sona was telling them they had something to do today before he could go on his date with Rebecca tomorrow. Arriving at the office, he saw all the members there and Sona looking happy about something in general. Rias and her group soon showed up as well, with Rebecca in tow, who all looked as serious as one could be in this situation. Akeno sent Naruto a wink and had a sultry smile on her face, but he ignored her. She was frowning, trying to think of some way to get his attention on him, but she was stopped in her train of thought when Rebecca announced. Today, for most of you new devils, you're going to be going to the familiar forest to finally get your own familiars. However, I must warn you not to wander off, because this is a dangerous place if you don't know what is out there. Issei was looking at Rebecca with confusion and asked. What's a familiar? Everyone in the room looked at him like he was an idiot. Oh wait, he is an idiot, my bad. Familiars are partners that help you with the day-to-day things of the world. He was glaring at Naruto for his explanation, but before he could say anything, Rias summoned her bat to show him. She took a sexy girl form in which it distracted Issei and made him remember she was the one to hand him his flyer. Akeno summoned her imps and Kaneko her white cat. Kiba summoned his falcon, who he tried to impress Tsubaki, but she wasn't looking at him but Naruto instead. He was frustrated now, but he decided to stay silent and wait for his opportunity to humiliate Naruto and win over Tsubaki. As you can see, all familiars come in all shapes and sizes. Saji and Issei were thinking of sexy humanoid ones that would have big breasts and fine asses. I want a sexy one. Issei shouted and everyone rolled their eyes at him. This was typical for him, so they weren't really surprised by his statement. Naruto just ignored him and asked. So how are we getting there, Rebecca-san? She looked at Naruto and pulled his cheek hard, causing him to whine. We've talked about this in class. She had a flat look on her face. Fine, Rebecca-chan, happy? She nodded her head and held out a special summoning slip. With this summoning slip we can all go to the forest and find a familiar for everyone. This way we bypass the issue of who goes first and who has to wait a month. Sona nodded and they all gathered around her to get ready for the teleportation. However, Rebecca decided to grab one of Naruto's arms and pull him into her breasts before teleporting. The rest of the group looked angry with her, but one person scared the hell out of him right now, and it wasn't Shoko with her weird glowing eye. It was Sona, who was literally venomous with her glare at Rebecca and the fact she had some kind of black aura around her. But the spell kicked in immediately and soon everyone found themselves in some forest that had a very eerie feeling to it. Naruto was interested in the familiar master and what he was talking about. He heard Issei arguing with the man about having a sexy familiar and how he wanted to be his servant. But the man explained beings like that are rare even for him to see, and even if he meets them it doesn't mean they want to talk to him in any shape way. Come to us. Naruto looked around and saw the group was still talking to the familiar master and none of the voices sounded like the one he just heard. Come to us, one of Twilight. Now he knew for a fact he wasn't hearing shit. He looked around and finally he felt something pulling him in the direction of a large black tree in the distance. Without saying anything, Naruto summoned his wings and took off without a second thought. The group just saw Naruto take off and they were wondering where he was going. Sona was about to follow him, but the familiar master stopped them and said, "Don't worry. I know where he is heading, and trust me, going there when you're not invited is a death sentence." Where is he going then? He looked at Sona and replied with a straight face. The fairy tree. Issei broke out laughing the minute he said this, earning an irritated glare from him. You're telling us to stay away from fairies? Man, you're such a wimp. The master glared at him and explained. Don't think that for a second you know what their race is capable of just from some human books. Fairies are incredibly powerful beings. Some are stronger than the dragons that are floating around the world. They only seek out beings with the purest hearts and summon them to the tree in hopes of them finding one that is completely selfless. Sona, her peerage, and Rebecca realized what he was getting at. The truth is that Naruto was the most selfless person in the world because he cared for people more than himself. He took on their pain when he can and he would carry it with him no matter what. In his eyes, his own well-being paled in comparison to the need of others. He was truly someone that would put others before himself when it came to who to protect first. He also would throw his body in the way to protect them too, so it's no surprise now that they thought about it. The fairies would be interested in him, and if he is lucky, he might just get one as his familiar. The first devil in the history of the underworld to ally with a fairy, he would become famous beyond anything he could think of. Naruto finally arrived at a giant tree that was glowing with jewels coming out of the trunks in all different colors. Underneath the tree was a lake of some kind with two rocks sitting in the middle of them. Once he landed there in front of the lake, he saw that there were two girls standing there on the rocks. Well, one was standing and the other was sitting on the rock with a black umbrella at her side. Why the umbrella? He didn't know, considering he was sure it hasn't rained here in a while. So you've finally come, young one, spoke the one with the umbrella. She was wearing some kind of black outfit that was being held together by some strings across her stomach and chest. She had black gloves on with white fur at the ends of them, and she was wearing a long black shirt as well, showing off her legs. But her legs were also covered in black socks, and she was sitting there with her brown eyes looking at him with curiosity and happiness, and her black hair going down her back. She looked like a teenager, but she was not big in the breasts area, and Naruto didn't look there for long, otherwise she might bash him with the umbrella for it. The other girl was the opposite of her. She had long blonde hair with bright green eyes without a pupil in them, and she was wearing a large frilly pink dress with some blue ties going down the front of it. She looked more like a child walking around barefoot, and she had a pair of white, blue, and green wings on her back, while the black hair girl had more black and purple wings. The black hair girl finally giggled at him and said, "Is our beauty so great that you were rendered speechless?" "No. I mean yes. I mean sorry for staring." He bowed his head to them and they both were laughing at his expression. Finally, the blonde one jumped off the rock and started walking on the water. When in front of him she says, "It's fine, Kuroyuki, Excel World, is only messing with you. Please Mavis, Fairy Tale, like you're one to talk, you would mess with him more than I would. As much as I enjoy the mild bantering between the two of you, I would like to know why you both summoned me." Both girls looked at each other and nodded to each other, and Mavis asked, "Tell me, Naruto, with your power, what do you hope to accomplish with it?" Naruto raised an eyebrow at her because this was the second person to ask him this and he answered like he always did. To protect my friends and to make Sona proud of me no matter what. Both girls looked at him with interest and concentration until finally they smiled at him. You are the one. Please allow us to be your familiars. Both Mavis and Kuroyuki bowed to him and he felt his jaw drop there. Back with the group, so this whole trip in a whole was a waste of time for Sona and Rias peerages. Issei found the perfect partner in the form of green slime that dissolved clothes, but the girls quickly wiped it out after it undressed them. Rias and Rebecca summoned more clothes for the girls to cover themselves from the embarrassment they felt. They decided that no one was really getting a familiar until they saw Naruto returning with two girls at his side. One of them looked like a blonde-haired child and the other looked like a petite black-haired teenager. Sona looked at him and he answered, "Everyone, this is Mavis and Kuroyuki. These two are fairies and they want to become my familiar." Issei immediately perked up at the two girls, more the black-haired girl than the blonde though. He was about to say something but Kuroyuki decided to put a metal slab over his mouth, that way she didn't have to listen to him nag anyone right now. Naruto warned them both about him and the peerage he is from, and while Mavis was more childish of the two, they both agreed if they try anything, they would beat them to a pulp for it. The familiar master was shocked that this kid not only got a fairy familiar, but two of them. And from what he heard around the forest, these two were considered gods among their race with their amazing magic. So after signing the contract and making it official, the two girls told him to summon them when he needed them to do something. They flew back to the tree they lived in while the two peerages teleported away. Arriving at the council room, Naruto wished all of them a good day and headed back to his place. Upon arriving there, he got out his best outfit of a white button-up shirt, a pair of black dress slacks, and a pair of blue sneakers, clothes he had gotten from his king a few weeks ago after joining the peerage and one of the days he was out training with Madaka. That reminded him that he would start up his training with her again starting tomorrow, but they would be doing other stuff other than the special training grounds this time around. He checked himself out in the mirror and saw he looked good, so he took off and headed downtown to the amusement park that was in town for this week. Today was one of the last days it would be here, so the lines were going to be packed for everyone trying to get the good prizes. He was checking his watch when he heard, "Sorry, did I keep you waiting long?" Looking over to the side, he blushed up a major storm from the sight of her. Rebecca was wearing a blue top that was strained by her breasts, a white skirt that stopped at about her mid-thighs, and she was wearing a pair of black high-heel shoes. She was beautiful to look at and she seemed to forego the idea of makeup because she was hot without it. He totally agreed with that assessment, to be honest. Rebecca was trying her best to impress Naruto because while Rias had bad feelings to him, she was the opposite. Honestly, he was one of the first guys she found that was interested in her rather than what's beneath her clothes. She could see he had some lust for her, but he was a gentleman first by looking her in the face instead. After making sure he was still breathing, Naruto and Rebecca started going through the stalls and trying out the different foods there. What they didn't know was that they were being followed by several individuals. Shoko was watching the date with a furious glare in her eyes. The other girls were the same way and they were cursing they weren't in her position. Madaka, who had just returned to the human world, today was looking on with a calm, angry look on her face because she wanted to be in Rebecca's place now. The only girl that was not present at the moment was Sona because she was busy with paperwork and she wasn't worried about the date because she knew Naruto liked her more than Rebecca right now. So the date was progressing well. Naruto won a few of the games here and managed to get presents from each stall. One stall that was a stacked cup game, he got her a stuffed fox. Another stall with throwing balls into a bucket in which he won another stuffed animal for her in the form of a cat this time. Honestly, after winning at 5 of the stalls, they started barring him from all of the games in order to save their prizes. Naruto managed to hide the toys in a pocket dimension that he could summon while she was carrying the stuffed fox around with her. Naruto and Rebecca were ending this date at the amusement park with them sharing a drink together that was filled up too much and they were sharing it between each other. Naruto was handing her the drink when he was suddenly hit from behind by Issei. He had followed them to the amusement park and decided to try and ruin their date. He was angry his two best friends were gone from school and now the peeping hole was permanently sealed shut to where he couldn't look through it at all. Honestly, he missed his buds and they told him that it was Naruto's fault, so he decided to ruin his date for them. But what he didn't see in his moment of triumph was that the drink spilled all over Rebecca, ruining her new shirt and skirt and making her feel really sticky. Her temper finally snapped and she was glowing with absolute rage right now. Issei was unaware of it, but Naruto saw this and took a few steps back away from her. He was thinking Naruto was scared of him until he heard Issei. He looked behind him and saw a furious girl. He tried to run but she caught the back of his shirt and all the people could hear was the scream of a boy in pain. An hour later, Naruto had just watched Rebecca pretty much curb stomp Issei to the point she broke every bone in his body along with almost removing his balls while she was at it. All Naruto could do was shiver in fear of ever crossing her like he did, and hopefully he would make it out better than he did. Rebecca was wiping the blood off her hands and now was ready to finish this date so she could go home and bathe. Also, she should remember to talk to Rias tomorrow about this and to warn her if this happens again. She would make sure he paid with his life next time. Once they got some refreshments and started to head back to Naruto's place, they started sharing life stories with each other. Naruto found out while Rias was the heiress, she was next in line if anything happened to compromise her position with the clan. Naruto told her about his friends in the orphanage along with the promise he made to one of them when he was a kid. She thought it was cute. He was holding on to a childhood promise that he made years ago. Arriving back at his place, Rebecca said, "I had a great time, Naruto. Let's do this again sometime, huh?" "Sure. Only if it's okay with my king." Rebecca was upset with this, but she nodded her head, understanding his position. After making sure they would do it again, she gave him a kiss on the cheek and teleported back to her place. Entering his apartment, Naruto only wanted to relax and go to bed after such a stressful day and watching the most horrific beating he had ever seen in his life. But the minute he opened the door, he saw Akeno was lying on his dining room table half naked with her breasts hanging out for everyone to see. "Hello, Naruto-sama. How would you like to play with me now?" Naruto only deadpanned at her and started walking upstairs, and he said as he was going up, "Try not to make a mess of my kitchen, Shoko." Akeno was confused with what he was saying until she saw Shoko coming out of the showers carrying a sword and wearing some kind of armor around her body. Akeno knew from past experiences that armor was lightning-proof, so she was in serious trouble now. While Naruto was going to sleep, all he could hear was explosions coming from downstairs and a few crashes until finally he heard the shattering of the window. Just another day for Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto sat in class today and wondered what was going to happen this week. After the incident with his kitchen and Akeno, he had been trying to find a peaceful place to relax lately. However, it would seem that Akeno wouldn't leave him alone for some unknown reason, and it was irritating to him. While he liked the attention before he joined Sona's peerage, now he couldn't care less. He had seen Tsubaki naked, and to be honest, and she had a much better body than hers. The bell rings and Naruto got out of his seat, quickly makes a mad dash for the student council room. This was the only place in the school he had peace. Arriving at the office door, he barged through and bowed to Sona. Taking his seat at his desk, he started working on some of the paperwork he had stacked up for a while now. Sona was shocked that he was here and was wondering what had gotten into him. Looking at his face, she could tell he was annoyed about something, but what about? To be honest, she had no idea. Standing from her desk and walking up to his desk, she stood next to him. "Naruto. What's wrong? You look irritated." Naruto looked at her with a small twitch in his eyes. "It's Akeno and Issei. They have been hounding me for the last few days and it's driving me thoroughly nuts." Issei had decided that after his beating from Rebecca he would continue on harassing Naruto. He messed with his locker and failed, tried to mess with his schoolwork and failed, and then he tried ambushing him and failed at this as well. To be completely honest, everything he tried to do to Naruto backfired on him for some reason, but that still didn't stop him from being extremely irritating. Between his constant harassment and Akeno's attempts to seduce him, he was literally having to race back to the student council office to find some reprieve. His own home wasn't safe considering that Akeno broke in a few times in the past few days to get to him. Just like the first time, one of the girls were there to throw her out after beating her up a little bit. First it was Jack after she interrupted her sleep and the fact she prevented Naruto from coming to bed to comfort her. Then it was Shoko who thrashed her for attempting to seduce him. Finally Tsubaki was the one that broke her most of the time because she showed that she had an amazing body just like hers, but she didn't need to flaunt it to get his attention. Now Sona could see Naruto's reasons for being irritated and sleepy at the same time. At first, he didn't want to tell her he was sleepy because she would get upset with him about it and tell him to get better sleep, which he would, if Akeno and Issei left him alone long enough for him to get that sleep. After finishing her train of thought, she looked and saw he was actually asleep at his desk and thought it was cute. He was really trying to work, but at the same time he was trying to sleep without her noticing. Summoning a pillow and a blanket, she put his head on the pillow and put a blanket around him. Walking out of her office, she put a barrier there to tell her peerage not to go in. However, she still stood outside her door waiting for some of them to show up, and soon enough all of them were in front of her. Looking at them, she said, "Naruto is sleeping inside since he's not been sleeping well, considering that some of you didn't tell me he was being harassed by Rias Pawn and Queen." Sona's eyes narrowed at them and they all looked guilty for not telling her. "Honestly, we wanted to tell you, but Naruto didn't want you to ruin your friendship with Rias over him." Tsubaki knew his reason for not saying anything and she thought it was cute. He wanted their king to stay friends with Rias. Sona also thought it was nice of him to think of her first, but his health was her top concern at the moment. Motioning them to follow her, she led them through the school and soon arrived at the classroom where Rebecca was having lunch with Rias. Sitting there, She had a stern look on her face and it showed she was done messing around. Rias, when are you going to deal with your pawn and queen? The wedding is coming up and you can't afford to be screwing around right now, Rias frowned. I know that, but the only person that can help me, I need to ask Sona to trade for a little bit. Sona walked up to them and slammed her hands on the desk, getting their attention. She glared at Rias. Why would I trade you any of my pieces considering you have done nothing but harass him since day one? On top of that, you need to make it clear to your peerage to stay away from Naruto because I am annoyed that he is so tired he fell asleep doing his paperwork. Well, this is unexpected, Rebecca said with a frown on her face. Rias stood up and glared at both of them. Look, I know what those two were doing is bad and I will put a stop to it, but right now I am trying to get Naruto to join my group and help me beat Riser. She walked out of the room leaving Sona and Rebecca behind. So is Naruto going to help her? Rebecca wasn't stupid, she knew Naruto would help Rias if it was something that he didn't agree with. An arranged marriage is something he was against, so this wouldn't be something he would stay neutral to. I don't know, to be honest, he could help her or not, it's really up in the air. Looking at Rebecca, she asked, what is the problem with you lately? As of the last few days, Rebecca had been extremely irritated and she wondered why. That pig wants to add me into the mix of his wedding, claiming that he should have both of us if he is forced to fight Rias. Sona was surprised at the perversity of Riser. Honestly, that boy was as bad as Issei at times, but the fact that he would actually perform the sexual actions while making others watch makes him much worse than Issei. Well then, that settles it then. If she does fight Riser, Naruto will most likely be in the mix in order to protect you, Rebecca. She nodded. Because they had become good friends after their date, it wouldn't be surprising to see him fight to protect her. However, that would mean that he would have to be traded to Rias, and there was no one she wanted from that group in her peerage. Then Sona thought of something. Rebecca, I have an idea to make sure all parties are happy if you're willing to hear me out. Rebecca noticed the gleam in Sona's eyes and knew this would be good. Time skip. Leaving the school, Naruto was headed back to his place to get some shut-eye from a long day at work and training. Madaka basically ran him into the ground with her training, and now she was saying he was stronger than he was a month ago. This was something considering she was using about 20% of her full power and no real power techniques yet. In no time he was sure he would match even extremely powerful figures in the underworld, but first he needed the experience to go with his strength. Right before he could get home, however, he felt someone behind him. Summoning his sword, he turned to see who it is and was surprised at who it was. There was a girl wearing a gothic-made lolicon outfit and she was standing there with black wings behind her. She was smirked at Naruto and she chucked the light spear in her hand at him. Naruto slammed his sword against it, making it disperse. This shocked the girl, but she decided to get on with her goal of delivering a message. Rainier is being punished for helping you, little devil. Come and get her, if you want. Naruto went stiff, thinking that Rainier was in deep trouble because she was trying to help him. Before he do anything, the blonde girl was gone and he was alone. Racing back to his house, he saw that Jack and Shoko were there and his abrupt entrance surprised them. He threw his book bag on the ground and took off again. The girls looked at each other for a second, then took off after him to see what was going on. Once they caught up to him, they saw he had a glint in his eyes and he was out there for a personal purpose. Getting close to the church, they realized that Naruto was going to pick a fight with the fallen angels and they tried to stop him from doing it. However, he wasn't listening to them and he pushed past them. Arriving at the church, Naruto saw there were a few exorcists standing at the entrance and they were ready to fight. However, Naruto was in no mood for delays, so he quickly cut through most of them and smashed through the front door. Once inside, he saw that the room was empty except for a single man with red eyes, white hair, and a crazy grin on his face. He was wearing a blue trench coat and a white priest's robe while carrying a gun and some kind of light sword. Greetings, you shitty devils. My name is Freed. I am here to erase your shitty existence from this world. He aimed his gun at Naruto, but when he fired the first few rounds, Naruto blocked each shot. The bullets were cut in half with each deflection and Naruto stood unscratched. Looking at him, he felt like he knew this guy from somewhere, but he couldn't pinpoint the feeling. Huh, you were not bad first time back in Kuo, and I feel like this will be just as great an experience for me. Naruto raised an eyebrow at him and he continued, oh, you didn't know. I was here a few years ago for this hot-ass nun. She resisted my advances, so I raped her in the church and murdered her not too long afterwards. Seeing all the crying kids begging for help pissed me off, so I killed all of them to send them to God. Naruto felt the sharp sting in his head, but it was minor to the feeling he was having right now. This man, he was the one that murdered all of them and killed the nun. He was the one that took his family from him. Now he was beyond furious and this thing was beyond retribution. His magic was running wild and he could barely feel himself and he was slipping. The ground started shaking underneath him and the building was barely standing from his immense magical energy filling the room. Freed saw Naruto's eyes and he had to say, Although he wished he had been quiet, he was freaking out. They went from blue to gold with a hint of red in them with a psychotic murderous gleam to go with it. His body was being covered in some kind of black aura of dark magic and his body was barely visible underneath. Examining Naruto, he saw that his fury was far past stabilized levels and he was ready to slaughter whoever crossed him. Naruto felt his uncontrolled magic focusing into the sword and he raised and swung the blade at Freed. There was a large wave of black energy that erupted from his sword and it tore the ground in its path to pieces along with the church. The entire building started collapsing and he was standing in the middle of it all. Panicking, Freed fired more rounds at him but the minute they hit him they disintegrated right on the spot. Then he ran out of bullets so he dropped the gun and charged at him with his sword, swinging his blade. He tried to cut his opponent diagonally and then clean into two pieces but Naruto's aura stopped and shattered the blade on contact leaving him defenseless. Naruto sped behind him and with one mighty slash, he cut Freed in half down the middle. With his one hand raised, he focused a lot of dark magic and blasted Freed, destroying his body. Soon there was nothing remaining of the man that murdered everyone he loved. Turning away from the scene, he made his way downstairs to find Rainier and try to save her. With Shoko and Jack, both girls were standing outside of the perimeter of the church and were looking at the rogue priests surrounding them and the two fallen angels with them. One of the fallen was the gothic lolicon from earlier and the other was a purple-haired woman wearing a tight-fitting red dress that showed off her shapely legs. She had large breasts and she was carrying her own light spear in hand, looking at the girls with boredom. Shoko had summoned her samurai flight armor and was wielding two katanas in her hand. One had a red handle and wrappings and the other had a blue handle and wrappings. She was looking at them with fury in her eyes and was ready for a fight. Jack was standing there with her two purple knives in hand and in a wide-based stance. She was looking around waiting for someone to make the first move. Finally, she noticed one of the rogues charging her from behind, making her leap into the air, turn and throw her knife into his face. The blade went right between his eyes and he crashed to the ground with a thud, landing on his corpse. She forcefully extracted the knife from his head and waited for the others to react. Within seconds, the rest of the rogues were attacking her and Shoko and the girls were wiping the floor with them. Shoko had sliced several of them in half with her two swords. Both red and blue-handled blades were coated with fire or blue glow, respectively. When she sliced one of them with the blue blade, they freeze and shatter in seconds. Turning around she would then slam her inferno blade into someone's torso and then they would ignite instantly, thus turning them into ash within seconds. Quickly finishing with her group, she watched as Jack gracefully sliced the throats of her enemies whilst leaping and dashing past each. This would lead her to tossing her extra knives at the farther targets piercing their leg or necks. Some were soon on the ground trying to move from being hit in the leg whilst others were gurgling on blood. Finishing with the mobile idiots, she walked up to the ones she crippled all the while spinning her blades menacingly. Then she sliced their throats killing them in seconds. With one of the guys, she managed to cut all the way through and send his head to the ground in a show of blood. Now all that remained of the enemy was the body of the dead and the two fallen angels standing in front of them. Jack salvaged all her knives along with her two main knives in her hand stood at the ready. Her partner was standing there with a bored look on her face and looking at the two fallen standing in front of them. Finishing with these two would be easy considering they were lower-ranking members of the fallen angel race. It was going to be a joke considering they had crushed all of their other opponents with ease and the remainder, being the fallen, were scared to the death of them. Whilst they were only pawns, they had trained their bodies and minds to the point where they could take on much more experienced opponents and defeat them with ease. However, they knew their limitations and right now they could tell their magical energy core was half full at the moment, but that was way more than enough to destroy the two idiots. The fallen angels threw their spears hoping they would hit them, but sadly, for them, Shoko was ready and destroyed both of their spears with ease. After she did this, Jack dashed towards them and threw her knives at them to nail them to the ground, but they took to the sky and were able to dodge their attacks. "You can't reach us unless you fly, you stupid devils." The blonde brat was getting on Jack's nerves, so with a sign from Shoko, she decided to end the fight with a swift retribution. Gathering up some of her magic, she threw her two knives into the sky and waited for them to return. The fallen had dodged the attack and thought that was it, so the blonde continued taunting them. "Ha! Are you kidding? You missed us, you stupid bitches." Jack was watching for the glint of purple and then she saw it. Smiling slightly she said, "Game over, we win." This statement confused the fallen until they sensed something coming down on them. Looking back and up, they saw hundreds and hundreds of purple blades falling from the sky above them. Before they could make move, the blades started falling right into and through them. The blades pierced any reachable spots on their bodies and then fell all over the battlefield, signaling that they were being anchored to the ground. Once the blades finally stopped, they were completely pinned to the ground by the multiple knives in their wings and limbs. After the display, Shoko walked in front of them and she raised both swords and whispered, No one attacks our friend and lives. Bringing the two blades down through their guts, they soon died. One exploded into a ball of fire while the other was frozen and then shattered after a few seconds. Removing her swords from the ground, she looked at her little assassin friend, and that friend was standing there with her two knives in her hands. Overall, this was a rather normal fight for them, and as a result, they came out with no injuries at all. Suddenly, they felt a lot of dark magic focused around the church and made a beeline for it. Arriving there, they saw that the foundation of the place was falling apart. Then some beams of black energy obliterated the front of the church and the back of it, leaving the building barely standing from the attacks. They walked through the main floor of the building and saw the damage that was left behind from Naruto's attack and couldn't believe that he could do this level of devastation. With his boosted gear, they might have reluctantly believed it, but he wasn't using it. This was just raw magic. What sorcery allowed him to do something like this? Basement Naruto was striding through the basement, killing all the rogues that were there and sending the rest flying to their deaths as well. Either he used his sword to kill them or he would use his magic to make them disappear. Naruto's black aura was incredible. It was growing wilder and wilder as the minutes passed. He finally arrived at the meeting room below the church and saw a man wearing a trench coat and hat over his head. He had black hair and looked rugged to the sight. Behind him was Rainier, and with just a look, one could see that she was tortured viciously and she was barely able to stay awake. Finally, Naruto moved his attention from the man, saw this, and his magic erupted again, and this drew the attention of the man. He was looking at Naruto with excitement in his eyes. Right before he could turn around and put his spear through her, the pissed-off devil was in between him and Rainier. He was startled for a moment and then tried to hit him with his spear, but Naruto held his palm out and whispered, "Be gone." With that, a black aura radiated out of his hand and disintegrated the man, leaving nothing in his place. Naruto turned to Rainier and quickly took her off the cross she was being tortured on. After he removed her from the cross, he began to walk back up the stairs and to the remaining of the standing church. There he saw Shoko and Jack waiting for him, and they were shocked. He had a fallen angel in his hands. They were about to make a move against her, but he gave them a direct glare to tell them not to even try it. She was the one that killed me, but she is also the one that wanted to save an innocent girl from having her sacred gear stolen. She tried to warn me about her group's activity, but she was tortured for her betrayal. The girls were taken aback by this but understood what he was getting at. Finally, he handed her over to Shoko and said, "Take her to the cafe where I work and tell Asia to heal her so she can be on her way. Don't let anyone see you doing this, okay?" Shoko was hesitant to do this, but she nodded and was gone with a teleportation spell. "You know, I can tell that you're there, so why don't you come out?" Jack was confused at Naruto's words until she saw a dark cloaked hooded man walking out of the shadows and stand in the light with his arms across his chest. He was looking at the man with a stiff posture but still rigid to be ready for a fight. The man then laughed a little bit. "No getting past you, child of the Dark Knight." Naruto looked at him with confusion. The man removed his hood, showing them his face. He had long red hair that was spiky and was reaching outward from behind, and he had bright green eyes. Underneath his eyes were two purple teardrops. On his face above was a cheesy smirk as he was looked at the one he called the child of the Dark Knight. "Who are you?" The man laughed and he put one hand over his chest and bowed to him. "Name's Axel. Axel. Got it memorized?" Naruto narrowed his eyes at him and had his sword ready to fight this man. Jack had her knives at the ready as well, and her posture showed she was ready to attack, but the man waved his hands out and summoned some fire into his hands. They took the form of circles with a bar stretching across the diameter for a handle. They had spikes on the end of them and they were inferno red in color. "The reason I am here is to test how strong you are compared to your ancestor." Without waiting a second, a large fire ring surrounded the two of them and cut off Jack from interfering. "Kinda want this fight to be one-on-one, ya know?" He then started rotating the weapons in his hand and was ready to lash at him in a second. Drawing his sword, Naruto started gathering his magic from earlier and got ready to fight. This man was stronger than anyone he had faced in battle at this point except for Madaka. She was light years ahead of this guy, but he was no slouch in the posture he had showed he was ready to fight. Within seconds the man threw his first red ring and it ignited. Naruto brought his blade down and deflected it away from him, but the man was right on top of him, grabbing the chakrams, as Naruto thought they were called. The man charged at him again. He started swinging them from side to side, but Naruto matched each swing with his own skilled blade swipes. Naruto finally found an opening and swung his sword sideways for his opponent's upper abdomen, but he jumped away from the attack in the nick of time. Then he slid across the ground to get behind Naruto and threw the chakrams at his back. "Burn, baby." Our blonde protagonist felt the fiery blades digging into his back and he felt the heat searing across his skin. Naruto felt himself sent airborne and then kicked in the back to the ground, charging at him with his chakrams in hand. The man was ready to unleash another attack, but Naruto fired a bit of his magic at him. He summoned his fire to block it and there was a small explosion from it. This was slowly irritating Naruto, but the guy was good. He was more elusive than his past opponents and he had a decent amount of power to give him trouble, but the issue with this guy was that he was rather one-dimensional and without his weapons he would struggle against Naruto. So with that thought in mind, Naruto jumped to his feet and waited for the man to throw one again. In seconds, he threw one of them again, but Naruto this time was ready and smashed it into the ground. Surprisingly, the guy was on top of him again and he slammed his foot into his face. Naruto went sprawling back and then felt the two chakrams rammed into his stomach with a squelch to accompany. Axel stopped his fire and withdrew his weapons from his abdomen and let him fall to the ground. Well, that was a bore. Oh well, I might as well kill some time and deal with your friends. While this fight was going on, Sona and the rest of the peerage showed up for support. Jack informed them of this man that attacked Naruto, and now that he was standing on top of Naruto, Sona was nervous. She could feel his power and see that he was barely hurt while Naruto was injured badly. She was about to summon some of her magic, but then she saw a black aura forming around Naruto again, but this time he had something behind him. Some kind of ethereal being was floating behind Naruto as he got back to his feet. It wasn't humanoid by any standards and it was unnerving to look at, but that wasn't what had her most worried. Naruto's eyes were glowing red and he was radiating a black aura. He was looking at Axel with wide eyes and he looked absolutely vengeful, right? Before Axel could do anything, the ethereal beast behind Naruto threw his hand out and smashed the spot he was standing. Axel managed to dodge, but he was sweating. This thing was stronger than he thought it would be, but he was needed to gather information on this kid, so he threw his chakrams again, but this time things went different. With one swing of his sword, the weapons were smashed into pieces, leaving atomic bits. Luckily he could make them again with ease, but this guy's power was on a completely different level. So deciding he got all the information he needed, he said with his hand behind him, "Well, it's been fun and I will see you guys later." A black opening appeared behind him and he jumped into it and disappeared altogether. Naruto roared at the loss of his prey, and with that roar, he sent his aura lashing out around the building. Sona and her peerage fled the building and watched as the entire place came crashing down. The ethereal spirit behind Naruto smashed the roof to pieces and he stood there with it looking at his friends. It let out a roar and Naruto summoned his wings to charge at them. That's enough of that. With a hard bonk on the head, Naruto was sent crashing to the ground and the creature behind him disappeared altogether. Behind him was Mia, who ran the cafe Naruto worked at. Needless to say, everyone was shocked to see her there. "It would seem that your blood is starting to stir and it's time for me to step in." Sona stood in front of her and she glared daggers at Mia. Mia, on the other hand, thought it was cute and laughed a little bit at her. "Who are you really, Mia? Obviously you know more about Naruto than you let on, and that is something that you have to answer for." She laughed at Sona, knowing she didn't have to, but answered, "Well, the truth is that I am someone that his mother knew very well and was appointed as his godmother in a sense." This revelation hit everyone like a freight train. "But then why haven't you been there for him then?" She looked over at Tsubaki and sighed. "It was his mother's dying wish that he be left in peace, but when his bloodline awakens, that it was my job to make sure he got the proper training for it." Sona was dying to know what was so special about his bloodline. She heard stories of someone that had that same spirit, but he was a legend, nothing more. Besides, that was eons ago. The bloodline had become lost in the sands of time. "How about we get out of here, and that way we can have a private conversation when he wakes up?" Everyone begrudgingly agreed on this, and Mia picked him up on her shoulder and they were teleported back to the cafe for their discussion. Next day Naruto woke up and when he looked around, it was his bedroom. To his side was someone he thought he would never see in his room. Rebecca was cuddled up next to him, shocking him to the core, especially since he could feel she was stark naked underneath his sheets. This was a first for him and he tried his best to not wake her up. Getting out of bed safely, he went to his bathroom and started cleaning up by taking a nice hot shower. Once he was finished with that, he walked out to see Rebecca was standing in the middle of the room naked as the day she was born. He tried not to have a heart attack, but it was hard given her alluring beauty. Her long red hair cascaded down her back and her amazing figure was shown off to the rest of the room. Naruto decided to get this over with and asked, "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" She turned to him and showed off her amazing bouncy breasts to him. He simply focused on her eyes. "Don't worry, Naruto. We didn't do anything. I am still a virgin." His eyes nearly popped out of his head, then they narrowed. "That's not what I meant and you know it." She giggled at him and started getting dressed again. Putting on her panties, she struggled getting her bra on, when Naruto slowly came behind her and assisted. "You've done this before." "Only with Tsubaki, and believe me, I don't intend to do it again anytime soon after this." She laughed at him for this comment and patted his cheek. After they got dressed, Naruto decided to deal with the issue at hand. Why Rebecca was in his room and how he himself got here. As if reading his mind, Rebecca answered his questions. Apparently you were attacked by an unknown assailant last night and suffered massive damage from the incident in general, however someone showed up to stop your rampage when you became something else entirely. Who? They heard the door open and entered Mia, and she was not pleased with what she saw. Her apparent godson was standing there with Rebecca with some intimacy in between them. Soon a dark aura formed behind her along with an evil mask, and she said, "While I understand you two had quite the night, intimate actions will not be tolerated in this household. But this is my house." He received bonk on the head courtesy of her kendo wooden blade, which made him wince in pain. Now, that's no way to talk to you, godmother." Naruto was startled to hear this and was about to start the whole "why were you never around" ordeal. But then he remembered she was always watching him while he was at the restaurant and taking an extra interest in him while he was working there and on his breaks. He sighed, figuring she wasn't his mother so she wasn't obliged to be around, and they proceeded down the steps to the next room in order to get ready for the busy day ahead of them. But for reasons unknown, Naruto felt like something was different within himself. He remembered his darker magic and some of the things that happened to him, but not much else. After finishing breakfast, Naruto was about to head out until he felt someone grabbing him by the collar of his uniform. "Where do you think you're going, young man?" Mia had her aura behind her again and her smile was barely noticeable. "Well, I was about to go to school, godmother." She shook her head, and Rebecca was also saying he wasn't. "Yesterday was a rough day for you and we are not allowing you to go anywhere right now, so go back upstairs and get some more sleep." Naruto wanted to argue with her, but he did still feel tired, so he agreed to go to bed. Lying on his bed, he felt his eyes getting heavy until finally he did fall asleep and drifted into a deep sleep. Dream realm. Naruto was floating in a bright space, or at least on some kind of platform. Looking around, he saw there was someone standing nearby smiling at him. This man was wearing a black cloak with red stitching in the front of it and a white shirt underneath it. He was standing there with a pair of blue-colored eyes watching Naruto with amusement. Naruto noticed he had a large sword impaled into the ground next to him, but it looked like a regular sword with a normal handle and straight blade. "Well, it's good to see you, young one." The man removed his sword from the ground and he started marching to Naruto with firmness in his step. Naruto was on edge and summoned his sword as well and was ready to impale him with it. Stopping in front of the boy, he laughed at his firm posture to fight him regardless that he was. This was a welcome gesture considering he expected all of his family to be fearless and willing to fight for what they believe in. With a single swipe of his blade, the sword in the boy's hand was sent flying with ease. It let out a clink in the distance and Naruto stared at the man with shock. He disarmed him with such ease and it was upsetting to him. "I mean no harm, young one, I just wish to talk." Naruto glared at the man and asked, "Who are you?" He smiled at the boy for his demanding answers regardless of his position. "My name is Sparta and I guess you could say that you're my great-grandson. I've been looking forward to meeting you for a while now." Naruto was shocked by his proclamation, so he demanded, "How are you my great-grandfather? You've got to be some kind of supernatural being, right?" "Yes, that is true, but so are you now. You were never human from the beginning, only unconsciously pretending to be one." He was beyond shocked. How the hell was he something other than human? Sona informed him that he was human before this happened, so how could he become something else? "I know this is a lot to take in, but I need you to hear me out, okay?" Naruto nodded and he began his explanation. "Okay. Centuries ago, I waged a war against the many races that opposed me and the devil race in general. This war led to me facing off against some of the strongest beings, but I managed to defeat them in the end. While returning to the underworld, I felt we had finally achieved a form of peace. However, this led to distrust between the members in my faction because they felt they should be trying to finish off the rest of our enemies whilst they were still hurt." Naruto hummed in strict attention. "This sparked a civil war not too long afterwards and I soon joined the rebels to help them with their cause. In the end, we managed to force the old faction into submission, but the problem was that we had to rebuild. During this time of recuperation, I met a beautiful woman named Eva who ended up becoming my wife. She was an angel I met during the war. Shockingly enough, I learned that she couldn't fall like her brothers and sisters, so we were able to give birth to a beautiful baby boy and he became our pride and joy. However, Eva was soon killed by members of the old faction due to their hate, what with her being an angel married to yours truly." Naruto nodded. "After her death, I sent my child away and had him live in the human world from then on. The biggest issue was that I was slowly expiring, so with the last bit of my unique magic I put it into my own peerage piece and told everyone that it would only be able to awaken someone from my lineage, which brings us to you." Naruto couldn't believe it. He was a descendant of a legendary devil that fought in the Great War and the Underworld Civil War. On top of that, he married an angel, which makes him mostly a half-breed with angel blood in his body as well. But that does explain why he was able to stand in the church without feeling slightly uncomfortable. plus the holy weapons didn't hurt when piercing him or being near him. The biggest issue at the moment was what he was going to do with this revelation. I am here to teach you how to control my brand of magic and the mastery of that sword. Naruto felt his sword return to his hand and wondered how it got back in his hand. You know what? Bring it, old man. Bedroom late at night. Naruto woke up with a groan and then he felt something sitting on his chest right. Looking forward, he saw Rias was sitting on his chest. Desperation in her eyes. Naruto, I need you to take my virginity. Before she could get her clothes off, there appeared two teleportation circles. One released Rebecca and the other, the maid from the day when he first became a devil. Rias-sama, I am glad we stopped you before you went through with your actions. Naruto, tired from being trained by his great-grandfather and the fact that he still felt phantom aches all over his body, demanded. Okay, everyone, what the hell is going on? Looking around the room, he saw Rebecca was upset and Graphia was really frustrated. Naruto, this incident is easily explainable, in a sense. First, let's get the basic stuff out of the way. She pushed her cousin off of him and she sat on his lap. This was not what she meant, but whatever. First off, my cousin has been engaged to a prick named Riser Phoenix. Recently, he has been demanding I join his marriage plan because of some self-right he believes he has. Rias was trying to find someone to join her peerage and help her with her problem. However, she was more interested in Issei because his sacred gear was radiating more than yours was, so she thought he was stronger. Now after everything that has happened, she needs your help to deal with him. But Sona won't help her for anything right now, especially after everything that has happened recently. So what does that have to do with me? Rebecca sighed and asked. I need you to come to the meeting tomorrow and be my representative instead of Rias. While I don't care to being married, I don't want to marry someone that is more interested in my breasts and vagina than my personal well-being. Naruto was conflicted. He didn't like Rias at all and didn't care about her, but the problem was he liked Rebecca and didn't want her to suffer for her cousin's issues with her fiancé. Fine. Tell me where to be and I'll be there. Both Rias and Rebecca smiled and answered. Tomorrow at the Occult Research Club, and it'll be early in the morning. Both girls teleported out of the room, leaving him with Graphia, who was just staring straight at him. What? She shook her head and replied, I am sorry, your arm caught my attention. Looking to his arms, he saw that his right arm had something on it. The damn thing looked demonic with the sinister black and red coloring to it. Whoa, now that's freaky. I don't know what this is. Graphia touched it and soon her magic was being drained out of her body at an alarming rate. Naruto's reserves were larger than before and his arm's mutation had disappeared. Sorry about that. I didn't know that would happen. It would seem that I was in need of magic to replenish my reserves. True to his word, he had both enlarged and drained his reserves in the dream realm and he was in need of much more magic now to recover. Luckily Graphia had large reserves and he was feeling way better. The emptier it was, the more his core went rampant and pushed his demon-like state to the surface. It's fine. I have more than enough to do the basic teleporting and fighting, so all is well. She bowed curtly and teleported back to Sirzek to inform him of the return of the next dark night and that his power was getting to the same level as his ancestor. Naruto fell back on his bed to get some sleep. Next day, he was standing in the clubroom along with Rias and her peerage and Rebecca as well. She was next to Naruto and she was smiling at him. She was glad he came to help her out with this problem she had. Graphia finally showed up and Rias began. The reason I've gathered all of you here is because before she could finish there was the appearance of an orange transportation circle. However, an unusual fire erupted from the circle and Naruto watched with a slight readiness to his posture. Out of the fire stood a man in a red suit with it open to show off his chest and he had blonde hair like Naruto. His eyes showed pure arrogance and disgust. Mostly for those he believed below him in status. He looked around. It's been a while since I've been to the human world. Turning around he saw Rias and Rebecca and approached both of them. Ah, there are my beautiful fiancés. Are you ready to head back to the underworld? Naruto was about to stand between him and Rebecca but the girl grabbed his hand and squeezed it. This told him not to do anything yet, so he remained composed but he was already on edge around this prick. He could tell this guy was just like Issei but worse than him in many ways. His goal was to find beauties to add them to his growing harem but also humiliate those he believed below him. Naruto was ready to send this guy flying if he tried anything. Riser took his seat on the couch with Rias and started messing with her hair and slowly rubbing her thigh, but she was not happy about this and neither was anyone else in the room considering the blatant disrespect he was showing to everyone. He was looking at Rebecca as well and was devising some way to get her to sit next to him or better on his lap. Akeno gave him some tea. He drank it in a single and offhandedly commented, Rias Queen makes excellent tea. Akeno barely smiled at him and walked back to her group. Now that everyone is gathered, allow me to explain the situation. This is Riser Fenix and he is Rio's fiancé. Naruto frowned at Graphia's statement and was about to correct her but Issei talked first. What do you mean? She can't marry this prick. Riser glared at the pawn and was about to set the room on fire to deal with him. It doesn't matter. I will not be marrying Riser. Rias stood up with authority and glared at him. Rias, you know our race is short on purebloods and it's only logical that we are to be wedded to preserve our lines. On that note, Rebecca, come stand by your fiancé. He had what he thought was a charming smile on but Rebecca returned it with her own. She threw Naruto's arm around her and answered. Sorry Riser, I already have a man of interest and he is standing there. Naruto was very annoyed. Sona was going to kill him for this pronouncement, let alone the fact he was here to begin with without telling her. Speak of the devil and she shall appear in this case. Sona appeared in the room and saw Naruto having his arm around Rebecca's shoulder. She stomped over to him and dragged him off of her, causing Rebecca to frown at this and grab his other arm. Then both of them started a minor glaring contest and Naruto saw Riser standing on his feet to glare at Naruto. Once he was inches from Naruto's face, he started gathering some of his fire magic. Get the hell out of here, low-class scum, and take your stupid king with you. Naruto freed himself from the girl's grip and clamped his hand around the other blonde's throat. Riser started choking on his own saliva and lack of air. Naruto's eyes glowed gold again and he was ready to kill this stupid man. No one insulted his king and got away with it. So with one swift and powerful chuck, he sent the other blonde-haired devil into the wall which caused it to crack under the impact. Naruto summoned his boosted gear and stood ready to fight him. Do you want to talk shit? Fine then, you and I. One-on-one, Riser growled at him as his back was killing him. Fine. Bring it, low-class scum. He summoned some of his magic and Naruto was ready to use his gear but Graphia got between them. I can't allow this to continue for Lord Searzek's honor. She was glaring at both boys to make them back down but Naruto wasn't one to cower from her or a glare. Looking at him crucially, she understood this was boiling over due to his loyalty to his king. That and she could see that he was in love with her and she, him. The problem was he was like Sparta and he would protect his love with everything he had. They needed to release some steam. So she teleported both of them to an empty part of the school and they still focused on each other. This is a one-on-one match where there is no killing whatsoever. If someone plans to break this rule then their lives are considered forfeit. Riser grunted at this but nodded, ready to fight. Naruto just stared at him and thought about what he should do in this fight. Compared to Axel, Riser was trash and looked more like a bull that would rush his enemies and try to overwhelm them. So he would let him throw his best attacks and then he was going to finish him with his balance breaker and crush him with ease. The orc and Rebecca and Sona were watching this fight as well so he would show what he learned from Madaka and Sparta in his last few sessions. Begin. Graphia backed away and erected a barrier around the two of them. Riser was the first to act by summoning his blazing wings and taken up into the sky. Once in the sky, he summoned some fire into his hand and turned them into spears. With a lazy posture he tossed the spears at Naruto and hoped they would take him out. But Naruto saw them coming a mile away and took off with his own wings. Soaring through the air, Naruto easily dodged the next set of fire spears. He just kept chucking them like they were javelins, but the Sparta child kept dodging the attacks with ease and waited for him to tire himself out. Riser then summoned a fire sphere and was about to throw it at him but Naruto closed the distance and sent him crashing to the ground instead. The Phoenix rose from the ground and started taunting him. Fool. No matter what you do to me, I shall recover every time. This is what makes me better than you. Flying at Naruto again, he started generating more fire around his body to attack him, but this time Naruto was ready for him and started dodging his attacks with more ease than before and was slowly getting more and more bored with him. Everyone was watching the fight with surprise, mainly at the fact that Naruto was defeating Riser with ease. While not the strongest of his age group, Riser was still a dominating force. Rebecca was watching the match and announced, Riser won't win. Everyone looked at her with faces asking her to explain her hypothesis to them. While it's true Riser can heal from almost anything that hits him, the problem is that is only the case if his magic can keep up with the repeating process. In this case, Naruto has done nothing but dodge Riser's magical attacks and counter with pure physicals. This means that Naruto still has all of his magic reserves where Riser has used about half of his. So this means that Naruto is going to win this fight if he can avoid taking too much damage, right? Sona was looking in on the fight and she decided to add her own examinations to the mix. Plus Naruto hasn't even began using his sacred gear, magic, or even his sword, which means that Riser is assuming Naruto doesn't have any other weapons than his limbs and wings in this fight. Everyone realized they were right and that soon Riser would waste all of his magic and this would lead to Naruto overwhelming him with simple attacks. Graphia was listening in on the conversation and had to agree with their assessments. Whether Naruto actually did things based on his strategy or on instincts, she wasn't sure, so this match was already set and the result was well known unless Naruto screwed up big time somewhere. Naruto v. Riser. This fight was too easy for Naruto considering that Riser was almost out of magic and panting like one of his slaves. If this was the extent of his power, then Naruto realized how Riser won the majority of his matches. He defeated them by sacrificing his lower-ranked pieces and then used his stronger pieces to weaken or defeat the bulk of the opposite forces before doing the damage himself. Honestly, this was one of the easiest matches had excluding the one with Issei. That boy was the easiest opponent he had ever fought. The church incident didn't count in his head, since he was experimenting with new unstable magic and his fight with Axel was the only real fight he had had since becoming a devil. Naruto saw Riser was beyond simple fatigue, so he knew it was time to end this match, so Naruto started boosting power without Riser noticing. After a few minutes, with little effort, he summoned his gear and activated the balance breaker. The customary red dragon wings behind him, then he started his assault against Riser. He tried to dodge him but couldn't. Blow after blow, Naruto was landing punches and kicks on Riser's face and body. The strikes was slowly sending him downwards the ground. Finally Naruto decided to finish the match off with an Inferno Red Dragon Orb shot and sent it at Riser from point-blank range and it caused a massive explosion knocking even its creator back. Geez. I really need to learn more control. That was too much. Naruto regained his lost balance and floated down to safe land. He saw that the Phoenix child was struggling to get out of the ground but couldn't. Also, he wasn't healing again, which meant his magic reserves were completely drained, so flying down to him, he slammed his foot onto his opponent's naked chest and stood there looking imposing. Graphia interfered in the matchup and announced the winner of the match as Naruto of the Sea Tree Peerage. Everyone was happy about the announcement except a few of them considering they don't like Naruto at all. All of a sudden Riser was on his feet and he tried to summon some of his fire magic again, but Graphia dashed in front of him. She grabbed his wrist and squeezed hard on it with an icy look in her eyes. He gulped, settled down and looked away from her. Seeing as you're so eager to fight again and the fact Rias does not wish to marry you, the family has agreed to a ratings game to settle the dispute. However, since you insisted on having Rebecca, she is being added to the mix with 2 members of her choosing. Riser nodded and looked ready to crush whoever got in between him and his prizes. I agree with the matchup Graphia, and I choose that my queen and Naruto assist me in the match against the Phoenix Peerage. Then he looked just venomous. He can't fight for you. He's a member of the Sea Tree Peerage, Sona responded. I am allowing her to borrow him for this battle. I will consider this for a future favor to call in when I need. Rebecca nodded and retorted. See. Naruto is now a member of my team for the time, and with him and my queen along with Rias Peerage that about evens the playing field for this match. Riser gritted his teeth, but he let his arrogance come through again. Very well. I will give your group 10 days to prepare for our match. Be ready, for I will be coming for my brides. He teleported back to his compound to recover from the damage he suffered and to warn his peerage of their need to win. Not just that, but the fact Rebecca was bringing her queen in with her to fight. Naruto deactivated his armor and stood there with a solemn face. He walked up to Sona and asked, "Is it all right I go and train with Rebecca and her queen?" Sona was touched. He would ask her first before he went and did something to let out a small part of her feelings. Yes, of course, Naruto, you don't need to ask me that. She gave him a kiss on the cheek and walked away to Rebecca. She leaned over to her and whispered, "Hurt Naruto's feelings or try and take him from me. I will show you just how smart I can be when inflicting pain." Rebecca saw her eyes were dark red with pure dark slits, then she teleported away, showing that she was done with her for the time being. Rebecca noted that was the first time she ever saw her snap like that, and it was no wonder considering she was known to be very composed, but that was something she couldn't worry about now because she needed to summon her queen. Flaring her magic, she summoned her and she stood next to her. Most of those present were either scared or blushing due to her presence. She had long blue hair with blue eyes, her skin was light in texture and her hair reached down her back. The uniform she wore showed off a fair amount of cleavage along with a tattoo there in between her breasts. This signified that she had a sacred gear, but it was hidden inside of her body instead of being visible. The outfit was a white military outfit with white and blue boots reaching up to her calf, and she had a general's hat on. It would seem that white and blue were her color scheme. Seeing Rebecca, she bowed to her on one knee. "Greetings, my king. How many times have we already gone over this death?" She smiled modestly at her king. Too many to count, really. She looked over everyone around her. Honestly, all of them were weak in her eyes, and she knew their weakest member could easily crush these people without trying. But there was someone there that caught her interest. It was the blonde hair boy standing to the side, and he was looking at Rebecca with an indifferent look on his face. Plus he didn't so much as glance at her breasts. That meant he had self-control, which was plus in her book. Okay gang. We've got about 10 days to prepare, so get ready because this will be some of the toughest training of your lives, and also considering Esdeath is assisting me in this as well, expect unexpected pain. She smirked at them and everyone except Naruto was shivering in fear. He was ready to begin more training in hopes of mastering his sword and the unique magic that came with it, maybe even reach the final stage of the devil trigger thing that old man Sparta told him about. They teleported away and thus began the journey in training for their first match and probably last match as a joint team. Thanks for watching.